You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Hey everybody, it's Mark Steiner and you're listening to Mark of the Maker, and I think this is episode 38 is what my notes say, which I always say it's hard to believe, but it really is. It doesn't seem like I've been doing it this long, but this is episode 38, so thanks for listening and joining us for this conversation. And so this one's another interview episode, which we really like the interviews because we get to talk to people that we know or people that we think are influential in the industry, and oftentimes those are one and the same. And so we have a guest with us this week. But before we get to that, let's make sure we got everybody here. So this is kind of an unusual episode because we don't have our man Tom Crine with us. So Tom has got some family commitments and he's off busy doing stuff. So Tom wasn't able to join this time. But we have Tom's doppelganger, Mr. Michael Birch.
Here.
All right. So Mr. Michael Birch is here. Mr. Sean Crine.
Hello.
Sean Kendrick, as well as Sean Crine.
Man, it's good to have some separate aliases. I mean...
Yeah, exactly. You got to have aliases. And so this time for episode 38, we're joined by Brian Efros. And Brian is a knife maker, I guess currently out of Colorado, but we'll let Brian get into that a little bit more. So Brian, welcome to Mark of the Maker.
Hey, thanks so much, man. I'm more than excited to be here with you guys.
I think when we had some Blade Show clips that we played in our Blade Show wrap-up episode, and I think I referred more than once to Efros effervescence.
That was funny because I was when I was driving to the gathering in Vegas this year, me and my buddy Jesse are cruising, and we threw on some Mark of the Makers to listen to, and I actually heard myself when you did your little Blade Show thing, and I had no idea that it actually made a cut. Pretty exciting.
Yeah. So it was good. Brian's a good dude. He's got a great perspective on this whole thing. He's been on his own unique path. We talk a lot of times on Mark of the Maker about how everybody has a story, right? Everyone has their own version of how they got to this point that we are with making knives and building a following and kind of building a business and a life around that. And so Brian's going to share that with us. And his is definitely, I think, a unique one that you'll all enjoy as well. And Brian's a great guy to talk to. So thanks for joining us. We appreciate it, man.
Oh, thanks again. It's an absolute honor. I'm very excited to be here talking with you guys.
It better be exciting.
It's gonna be so exciting. We can just break in the excitement right now.
Right.
Crack a beer and get to it. Can I do that? Are we allowed to drink a beer on the show? You can edit this out.
As long as you don't mention the brand, because we have certain endorsement deals that could fuck with.
Yeah. Understood. Well, like I said, just cut out what you need to do. And I'm not allegedly a beer. It's water.
Certain connections, including those words Mark and Maker. Just saying. So Brian, let's start out with the basics, man. We always talk with people about kind of how they grew up, where they were born, how they kind of came through life. So start us off, man. Tell us a little bit about how you got moving.
Yeah. So I grew up in a upper middle class neighborhood of Metro Detroit. Actually, probably about 15, 20 miles from where you're at right now, Mark.
Nice.
And I had a pretty, not a huge family, but a good sized family, and we were all pretty close. Lots of uncles and aunts and cousins, and like I said, Farmington Hills, Michigan. For anyone out there that's listening, that's where I did my thing, and I guess I should probably stick to some sort of the background that's pertinent to this show. Nobody really gives a fuck if I was awful at Little League, which I was really bad.
No, Brian, back up. Tell us about Little League, bro.
Oh man, the memories. Didn't get one hit the whole season. I really sucked.
It stuck with you.
But no, I grew up and it did. The coach would actually take us out.
He's been carrying that for a long time. I'm glad he let it out.
I gotta let it out, man. I gotta let it out. But no, I grew up and like I said, in Michigan, and I had probably just like your average good childhood. Things were nice. My parents were great, supportive of basically whatever I wanted to do. And my dad, one of the things that we did as a family vacation, at least once a year, we'd go on like a week or a little bit longer camping trip. And some of my absolute earliest memories are, just being out in the woods. And, I remember one time we were pulling a trailer out, and I don't remember what happened, but some shit was hanging off or needed to get tied on. And, Dad pulled out some twine and his Swiss Army pocket knife and cut it and looked at me. I remember him looking at me and saying, "This is why you always carry a knife when you go camping."
Nice.
And that's a really real early memory. And yeah, so I grew up kind of, like I said, doing your average kid teenage stuff. I was into skateboarding. Playing music was a huge part of my life. Once I hit 14, I got my first bass, and I've been playing shows on stage ever since. But went to your average nice elementary, middle school. My high school was actually really awesome. By my senior year, I was spending most of my time in the auto shop, or we had a whole like little engineering center with, computers and drafting tables and stuff. And,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time there, and I thought that was really kind of where I was going. I wasn't really good at it. I could do it, but I wasn't, there was kids in class that are like good at it. And, I was passing, doing all right.
So Brian, for people that aren't familiar, so Brian says you grew up in Farmington Hills. So you grew up in like a suburban, like neighborhood subdivision kind of environment, like not out in the country or something like that, or in the city. You're kind of somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. Total suburbs. One of the things that was cool about the particular neighborhood that I lived in was that there was like forests that had like trails that would all connect from forest to parks and stuff like that. And, a big pond. And, we would definitely go, me and my friends after school, just hang out in the forest. And, we built a little fort, I guess we called it out there. It wasn't much of a fort, just a couple logs in a circle. But yeah, I spent a lot of time, back in the 80s, we spent time outside, and, you'd go on bike rides for a couple hours and disappear and come home, and nobody was worried. It was
exactly.
Yeah, it was, a little different, but
that area is like suburban sprawl kind of stuff. So lots of people that live kind of near a city area, there's usually like a great expanse of suburbia, right? Where there's neighborhoods after neighborhoods. Farmington Hills is that kind of thing to some degree. I don't mean to minimize or make it sound anything different or weird, but right. I mean, that's where it was, where there's a bunch of neighborhoods and they connect, and there's bike paths, and you can ride your bike in the street, and it's not super busy.
No, I mean, my neighborhood didn't even have sidewalks. We would just ride in the street and all day long. And then by the time I was, 13, 14 years old, skateboarding was life. And, I'd go hang out with my friends, and we'd be out, wait till the parents go to sleep, and then we'd take our skateboards out and cruise down the middle of a 10-mile road at 1 a.m. and just go skateboarding along the local strip malls where you're not supposed to. And,
right.
Yeah, it was a very safe area, and a nice place to grow up with. Like I said, it was cool because, you were in your regular neighborhood, but there was lots of trails and just woods in my particular neighborhood. You go pick up rocks. Kids love rocks. I like rocks.
Oh yeah.
Go walk in there and find some special rocks.
It's a very Michigan thing, like Brian's talking about, to live in one of these Metro Detroit or Flint or Saginaw or, Lansing, kind of one of these suburban areas. But everyone talks in Michigan, the normal thing for people, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Everyone says, I'm going up north. So up north means into the northern part of Michigan. So I assume, Brian, when you went on your camping trip, you either went north or way over to the west of the lake or something, right? When you go on your summer camping thing.
We'd go up north, or we'd go over, across the bridge into Canada. There was this cool campground called the Pinery we'd go to.
Nice.
My dad would take us out to like not Western, but just Pennsylvania and West Virginia. We'd go on kind of little regional camping trips like that. And and then one of the camping trips that was really pretty important, memorable for me is when I was 16 years old. I went out with my Uncle Arthur and my cousins, and we drove down to New Mexico, and we spent 2.5 weeks in New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And on that trip, it was probably like the second or third day, you roll into kind of the tourist town, and they've got the shops with the knives and this and that. And in one of the shops, my cousin Kevin and I, we both bought this little Smith & Wesson folding, liner lock pocket knife. And I put that in my pocket when I was 16, and I carried that knife. That was my first time I had a knife that I carried like every day. And I think I had that knife in my pocket till I was about 23.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I actually if I didn't throw it away, it probably would have been still around somewhere. But, things happen.
Were those pants Jinkos? Just wondering.
Were those pants Jinkos? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I looked so ridiculous back in middle school. And my parents, they're like, "Oh, when you're older, you're gonna think of how ridiculous you looked." I'm like, yeah, I did, but back then I thought I was cool.
Well, hell
I
yeah.
was.
Oh yeah, you were the shit.
The big, like, it was like the bigger the pants, it was like a status symbol.
Mhm.
Yes,
Oh yeah, nope. I definitely had the Jinkos.
very cool.
I don't know about cool, but yeah.
Well, it was cool for the time. Period.
Yeah,
Cool, no
that
doubt.
time.
Well, and it's just swung 180 right now because now it's the skinny pants. It went from kids wearing like the biggest pants they could to now it's the skinny pants, which, that's cool. They look equally as ridiculous in my opinion, especially when I wear them. But
Yeah, they're not made for us.
no,
Not modern us.
If I had a sister, maybe it was made
For
for,
sure.
her.
never me. There was no there was no era in which I could pull that off.
So, like when I was growing up, Brian, it was my parents were big on travel, like car travel, summer trips. Like every summer, we would go somewhere.
Yeah,
And obviously, northern Michigan destinations were super popular because it's gorgeous.
up
and
north is the best.
places to fish and camp and all that stuff.
It's a state of mind too. You might only need to drive
Yeah.
a half hour to get there, but once you get there,
Right.
you're up north and it resonates.
But they were also all about like big trips. So like as once we got even just a teeny bit older, we were like drive to the Badlands and like drive to Glacier and like we did all kinds of crazy trips. We didn't go to the Southwest. That was one spot we never seemed to go, I guess because it was always hot there or whatever in the summertime. But we didn't so much go to the Southwest, but we went to central, northern kind of stuff and kind of western. We did an eastern trip up to Maine and stuff. It sounded like you guys did a little bit of that. You went to New Mexico. Did you have family there, or what took you guys that direction?
No, so my family, I always hear these great stories from long before I was born of my dad and my grandparents, and my dad had 3 brothers. There was all 4 of them, but they'd take these, like you're saying, big trips, kind of
Yeah,
all
epic
over
car
the
trips.
place. Yeah, big car trips, and yeah, like I said, we definitely did it. I did the trip to New Mexico was just kind of that. I remember, it was a couple months before the trip, my uncle called me up and he's like, "Hey, you want to do this? You want to go with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely."
Right.
So that was a really cool trip. We did that. My dad liked to go on cruises. We definitely spent a lot of time
nice.
on boats, which once he turned 18 was fantastic. You just lay around and drink all day. And what could be better? You eat, you drink, and you just chill on a boat. It's pretty all right. But we did lots of like I said, kind of regional camping trips and cruises. And I did the trip with my family down to New Mexico. And then, when I got a little bit older, I kind of started exploring on my own and going places with my friends. We'd come out to Colorado for the Telluride Bluegrass Festival or, kind of travel out east or wherever. And yeah, I've kind of always I love car trips. They're my favorite. I don't really like flying that much. I do it all the time, but I avoid it when I can.
So you mentioned your father having the Swiss Army knife and kind of so a moment that stuck with you, and you
I
talked
cut myself with that knife one time.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, he was at work, and I was probably 5 or 6, way before you should be going through your dad's shit playing with his knife. But who could resist? I might get in trouble if he listens to this episode.
Right. Sorry, Dad.
Yeah, well, it's too late now. But yeah, I know. I remember playing with it, and I was doing something stupid, obviously, because the knife kind of closed on my finger.
Yeah.
And it cut my finger. Swiss Army knives, they're fucking sharp. It
They
cut me
are.
good. And I don't remember what I told him, but I remember being in some sort of panic. And the thing that I was worried about was getting in trouble for playing with his knife, and then I might not be able to use it again.
Yeah.
Getting cut was like, whatever, you're bleeding, you'll be okay.
Right.
But the knife, we can't let Dad know that that's what happened. Hopefully, I remember to clean the blood off it. I'm sure I did. I was thorough.
That's funny.
Yeah, no. So yeah, Dad always had his Swiss Army knives, or a little pocket knife as well. Both of my grandfathers they weren't like like they have like the old knife that they always carry that's kind of passed down in the family, but they always had little pocket knives around, little folding stuff, and actually when my mom's dad, when my papa passed, I actually inherited his little collection of fun little knives that I still have now that are
Awesome.
Certainly. Yeah. There's no dollar value that they're worth, but it's a fun thing to kind of have and, good way to remember someone.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, actually my mom was a really big, person in my knife education. She'll tell a story. I mean, Mark, the Gibraltar Trade Center is probably not too far from you. Yeah. So they would always have their guns and knife shows there. And apparently for whatever reason, I don't know why my mom brought me there, but I'm glad she did. But yeah, we were at some, I don't know. Yeah. She wasn't really into like guns or knives, but for whatever reason, we're at the Gibraltar Trade Center and, she'll tell the story of me just like, I could care less about the guns, but every table that had knives on it, I was just drooling over. And she would have to physically drag me out of there. And
Nice.
Yeah. And yeah, for whatever reason, I've just always loved knives. And as soon as I was allowed to have them, I had them. And they were crappy knives, but they were everyone I could get my hands on.
They were always crappy knives. Always.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, no, I remember one time driving up north, with a friend and his dad, and there was a little flea market on the side of the road. And, I convinced his dad to let me buy a knife, which was great. His dad didn't care. He's not going to get in trouble.
Sure, kid, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. Like, you got money, actually? Yeah, buy whatever you want.
Right.
Get me a pack of smokes while you're in there.
Yeah. But I had this small little Israeli army pouch that my grandparents brought back from Israel. And I filled it up with knives, and they were all there's probably some of them still in the basement of my dad's house somewhere, taking up space, unless he threw all my shit away. But
after that whole Swiss Army knife thing, I wouldn't be surprised.
If he didn't throw them away before, they're fucking gone now, kid. But
now, did movies?
Yeah.
Did they play any part of that? I mean, was like I'm not sure how old you are, but
I'm 35.
Okay, so there's a good amount of action movies. You were in the prime of some of that good, shitty action movies that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Did any of that kind of influence the need for knives?
It really didn't. Unfortunately, I know you guys, you did the movie episode, the Three Knives, and it's a question you've asked other people on the show, and I've kind of been dreading that question because the answer is just, fucking not really. Who was it? Michelangelo had his fucking swords in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, that was my shit.
Right. Hell yeah.
Leonardo.
Leonardo had the katana.
Leonardo, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So that was, I was about that. And then, I always liked the knives and I thought it was cool, but I didn't have to have the Rambo knife,
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But I do remember, because I've always been a fan of magazines. I don't know why. Even now, everything's online. I love having a magazine. But I definitely remember like the magazines and catalogs that would have that little like coupon in the back for the $14.99 survival knife that's got the hollow handle with the compass and the fishing wire. I remember those and really wanting one. I don't think my dad ever let me buy one, which was probably a smart decision. But But yeah, no, I loved knives, and like I said, I collected them. I wanted as many around me as possible, but I didn't really have a movie knife. I was really, I think I saw those Ninja Turtles movies a lot. That was
Cowabunga. It is.
Yeah, cowabunga, dude. Fucking Shredder. I should name a knife the Shredder. That wouldn't be horrible.
Yeah, now you're talking.
I'm horrible at naming things. So you can see where that's...
You have one more. You're ready to go.
Yeah,
I would disagree with that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you.
No, dude, I think the way you keep, thematically relevant on quite a few of them, that works. Everything I've seen you throw out a name on, it's worked. And I understood the level it was working on. So,
yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, it's all... almost all of my knives are music named. The names are inspired by music, rather. And music has been a huge part of my life for a long time. And I don't know. When I was searching for inspiration, I just, and I think Sean is similar with you. A lot of you, you told me you do that as well. And music is, music is a heavy thing for me. I have a very deep appreciation and love for music and a need for it almost. And that's kind of where I've drawn the inspiration for my knife naming.
So Brian,
yeah.
you mentioned, no, that's all right.
I was just saying, sorry, I got totally sidetracked. I don't remember what we were talking about.
No, it's all good. It's important, right? This stuff matters. I think all that stuff, like you said, stuff that becomes important to you influences everything you do in your life from there, whether it's significant or less significant, right? So you mentioned what age were you when you said you got that Smith & Wesson knife? It was early teens, maybe?
Yeah, so I was 16 on that trip when I got that one, which was the first one that I'd never heard the term everyday carry.
Yeah, no.
But that was the first knife that I did that. And previous to that, it was just kind of, like I said, I had that little Israeli army bag that was just full of crappy knives. And I remember one time being at like a friend's cottage up north with him, and his family was there, and his parents happened to see me with this bag of knives just pulling, and they were a little freaked out about it. They're like,
"Who's that kid with the knife?"
Yeah, like he's staying with us for like 4 days,
right?
Man.
I'm gonna sleep with one eye open over there.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it was kind of just just always knives, just wanting knives. I love knives.
So you mentioned skateboarding and stuff.
Yeah.
And you got this Smith & Wesson folder when you were 14 or whatever, 16, sorry.
Yeah.
And so by then, were you already kind of on this path into music?
Yeah.
Or
so
kind of starting to get into it?
Yeah. Music was my thing back then. In high school, I already said I sucked at baseball. So sports wasn't my thing. I wasn't into like going to practice and this and that. That wasn't going to happen. And so, yeah, it was music. One of my best friends, Eric, he got a guitar, and I was like, dude, that is sweet. I should get a guitar too. And he's like, no, you should get a bass, and then we can start a band. And I'm like, that's an even better idea.
Eric's a smart dude.
Yeah. I'd been working then. I started work when I was 14 at like a Best Buy type place that was local to Metro Detroit. And so I had money saved up, and, Eric's like, you should get a bass. And I'm like, yeah. So we went on eBay. And, I think it was like $180 was this Yamaha bass that came with a nice case.
Nice.
And, I called my dad because that's 14 years old. You can't just spend $180, even if it's your own money. You still better ask your fucking dad.
You got to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. And I asked him, and, he's like, yeah, it's your fucking money. So I bought a bass, and that really set me off on a pretty, important trajectory in my life. I was in a band immediately, and we were playing shows. I was doing the high school talent shows. We were doing Battle of the Bands. Yeah. And I really formed the guys that were in my band. My best friends in the world. We're still close to, now. And, we started playing music together when we were 14.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
That's a serious bond, man.
Yeah.
Like you said, it depends on the person, right? Some people are casually interested in music who say they're really interested in music. Then there are people that are like, no shit, right? Like it goes straight to the core, and it motivates them and whatever. And it sounds like you're definitely in that latter category.
Yeah, no, it is everything. And that same band, once we all went to Michigan State, we went to college together, and we played at one point I was playing in 3 different bands in college, 3 to 4 gigs a week.
It's pretty awesome.
And then I played all through college. And then after college, when I moved to Denver, I got hooked up with this gentleman named Damon Wood, who's a good friend. And he has actually he was James Brown's lead guitar player, and he toured around the world with him for 7 years.
Awesome.
And, and so I was bartending at a Grateful Dead themed bar on Colfax in Denver, and Damon was a customer there, and through the grapevine he heard I played, and then one of my other coworkers, their band was playing a show, so they asked me to come up on stage and play a song with them, and I did. And next thing you know, Damon's over at my little studio apartment, and we're kind of interviewing me, doing little tryouts for the band, and I ended up playing with him for about 8 years. And
oh wow,
yeah, and there was a lot of months when that I paid my rent by playing music, and it was the best thing. Like there's few things that are a better feeling than being up on stage and making people dance. You know, like when you look out and you see a room of people and they're fucking grooving and you're the bass player and the bassist, you know, they're kind of a often overlooked member of a band, but they bear a pretty heavy burden. And yeah, just, you know, being able to make people move and move them is just the best. And right now I'm not playing with anybody. You know, life has become a lot. Knives have become the main focus. Playing music, I love it, but we only have so much time, and you got to prioritize where that goes. And I still play around the house and stuff like that. But all the spare time now has really been into just making knives and building a family.
Right. So how did you get, Brian, you talked about growing up in Michigan. You end up at Michigan State.
Yeah.
You're playing music while you're there. What'd you study at Michigan State?
Telecommunications.
Nice.
Yeah. Not the most useful degree, but I guess if you're going to be a knife maker, no degree is that useful. You know, I learned how to like build my own website for my first little knife company, but you know, but college, that was important because it taught me how to learn. That was like what I learned in my time at Michigan State. Like, you know, like if I want to go learn how to do something now, like I know the process for my brain for like how to learn. And I think that was really what I took away from college, was learning how to learn.
Yeah. So how'd you get from there to Denver?
So I was living with my buddy Joe, who was the drummer from the band since I was 14 at the time, one of my best buds. And one day he looked at me and he just said, "Hey man, when our lease is up in a couple months, you want to move to Denver?" And I thought about it and I was like, well, I can either move back to like, you know, Metro Detroit and get an apartment and get a job, or I can go to fucking Colorado, which seems way cooler. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. And just, I thought about it for like 15 seconds and I was like, yeah, I'm in. And, and so, you know, I'd had a lease on a place in East Lansing. I went to Michigan State, like I said. And, I moved out to Denver and we each got our own places. And I kind of came out here. I knew one person and, just kind of started doing my thing. And
yeah, that's awesome.
I first got a job working at the Apple store. I thought that would be like a cool thing for me. And I hated it. It wasn't a cool thing for me. And then right at the same time, this bar that I've been hanging out at, I kind of become friends with the people. I like becoming friends with people. And the manager noticed that I, you know, was kind of new, didn't really have a solid job yet. And I was also physically large enough to work the door at their bar. So he offered me a job there. And I ended up working at the Sancho's Broken Arrow is the name of it. But it's a Grateful Dead bar on Colfax Avenue, kind of in the downtown Denver area.
Yeah. Colfax is where it's at in Denver.
Yeah. In certain respects, absolutely. There was, you know, it cleaned it up a lot, but where I was at, there was definitely a lot of, you know, working security at a bar on kind of a little bit of a rougher street.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely experienced my first real fights there and people kind of coming at me with lead pipes and knives and guns and shit. That job was, it was a little bit eye opener. You know, you come out of college and, you know, you just move to Denver and you're like, life is great. And all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. on Colfax. And you're like, holy shit.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did I get myself into this?
Somehow you went from, bro, you want to go to Denver? Fuck yeah, let's go to Denver, to you're getting your shit attacked.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was
at some level,
you know, but luckily as well, like I said, you know, I'm a reasonably personable and like friendly person. So a lot of the people that, you know, the homeless people that would be around that would normally be a threat to people, I became friends with them. And, you know, and I'd see them and I'd wave and, you know, I'd respect them and they'd respect me. And, you know, after a while, you know, they'd come up and I'd just be like, Joe, man, you know, I can't let you in. It sucks. Being a door guy at a bar sucks. I feel for anyone out there that's listening that does that. Having to be the person that judges people to say whether or not you can come in a bar, that sucks. I did that for a long time. But working at the bar was also a really great thing for me because it gave me a chance to go snowboarding a ton, you know, during the daytime before my shift. And then when I did get into knife making, it allowed me a lot of free time to learn and develop that.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Well, now, speaking of that, man, what was your first experience with custom knives, or how about the first experience with the knife that you would say led you into what you're doing now in custom knives?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I kind of my cousin Jeremy Efros he is like a connoisseur of nice production knives. You know, he could show you his collection. He has like 3 different, Benchmade skirmishes. And,
Nice,
he could
nice.
tell you, he'll pull out the steel type and tell you each one. And he was also really into sharpening. He probably has, thousands of dollars worth of Japanese waterstones. And this dude,
Wow.
I mean, I can make a knife, but next to him, I can't sharpen for shit.
Check that out.
And so, I'd hang out with him because, like I said, my family was really close, and he'd have these just, really cool, Benchmades at Spyderco's and the Almar, the Sear 2000, just all kinds of just really nice production knives. And so I'd hang out with him. And then, in college, I was like, man, I think I want a little bit nicer knife. Oh no, actually, I know exactly what happened. I was carrying that same Smith & Wesson, and I went to this music festival called Bonnaroo. And
Yeah.
and I was down there in Bonnaroo doing Bonnaroo type things. And my campsite was probably about a half a mile from getting into the actual festival. And I walk in, and I'd had the pocket knife in my pocket because I just always have it. And I'd never thought that like you wouldn't be allowed to bring a knife somewhere. It's just
Yeah, right.
And I'm walking in, the security guard's like, hey man, you got a knife. You either got to go put that back at your campsite or throw it away. And I'm like, man, that thing's like a fucking half mile away. And I just tossed the knife. But then when I got back from Bonnaroo, I was like, all right, I need a new knife. And I'm pretty sure I went to Moose Jaw and I bought a Spyderco. It was like I don't know if it was all stainless steel or all titanium, but I don't know. It was maybe like the Delica. It was one of their smaller lockback models. But I had that for quite a while. And that was like, when you go up and you just experience, the jump between a $20 knife and a $120 knife, it's a big difference.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I had the Spyderco for a long time, and then somebody stole it. I think he stole a flashlight from me too. And I don't like that guy. But
no, fuck that guy.
After
Fuck that guy.
Fuck you, bro. But anyways, after that got stolen, I needed to replace it. And I called my cousin Jeremy, and he he recommended Benchmade. And he sent me off the way of a Benchmade minigrip Tillion.
Yeah.
And so that was my second, decent knife. It wasn't certainly not custom or anything, but it had really sparked an interest that went deeper now. All of a sudden it was like, before knives were kind of cool and I had a little collection of them, but now it was more of like appreciating something nice.
Yeah.
Because you get, and especially back then, I didn't have a lot of money. So a Benchmade mini grip was like $87 or something like that. And when you spend $87 on a knife when you're, 22 years old or something like that, you really appreciate it. And
it's a lot of damn money.
Yeah. And I loved that knife. And so that was then my daily carry. And then when I moved to Colorado, I decided, I love camping. Like I said before, that's always been a thing. And so when I moved to Colorado, I was working at the bar, and it was like I needed a camping knife because this little Benchmade mini grip, actually, it probably would have done everything I needed of it, but I wanted something big and sweet and badass.
Right.
And so I was searching around, and again, my cousin Jeremy, he gave me a suggestion of dealers and stuff to take a look at, and I did that. And sometimes you just Google something to see if something new pops up, and so it's like 3 a.m, and I'd gotten home from work at the bar, and I type in knife into Google. And I think the third thing that popped up was knifekits.com, build your own knife.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting. I didn't even realize you could build your own knife. Right. And so I did nothing because I was living in a little apartment, and that was that. But yeah, so I see the website. In any case, I ended up going back online and ordering an Ontario Rat 5. and that ended up becoming my camping knife for that rest of that summer.
Yeah,
But,
solid camp knife.
But fast forward, it was a great knife. I still have it. Unfortunately, I got stupid once I started learning things. I was like, I'm going to customize the handle, and totally ruined it. Yeah, I still have it. I could post a picture up somewhere. It's just, I stripped the coating off and buffed the shit out of the blade and, reshaped it and put like a redwood handle or something. I really ruined it. But so anyways, like I said, I found that knifekits.com and I ordered the Ontario, and then it's like 6 months later and it's the summer of 2008. And I had moved into a house with a couple friends and I had a garage, and I remembered that knifekits.com website, and I was like, I'm going to fucking order one. I'm going to do this. And I had no experience with anything. I didn't, the tools I owned were like a hammer and a couple screwdrivers and maybe a drill. And so I go online, I go to knifekits.com and I find one. And basically it's a deal where it's a pre-made blade and they give you some of those diamond wood. You remember the diamond wood that you used to see a bunch?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they send me out a pre-made mirror polished blade, some diamond wood handles, and a couple pieces of, hollow pin stock. And I bought some glue, and then, I went to Harbor Freight and I bought a $30 1x30-inch belt grinder and got to doing it, and it worked,
nice,
literally. And I didn't even have a drill press. I had a hand drill, but luckily there was a little circular level built into the back of it. And that's what I started with, was just a hand drill and a $30 belt sander. And, and that was my introduction into knife making. I didn't even know, like, the idea of a knife community. I hadn't even crossed my mind. I didn't know it existed. Online forums.
Right.
I didn't even know there were online forums. And so I was doing, like I said, so I bought that kit and it was cool, and I put it together and I finished it. And the main emotion that I felt when I was done was just a need for more. And I was like, this was great, but I got almost no satisfaction out of it because I didn't even build the blade myself, and in my mind, that was the heart of the knife, is obviously the fucking blade. What else would it be?
Right.
But yeah, so I bought, like I said, I bought that stuff, and I was just like, God, I have to do more. And then again, I was talking to my cousin Jeremy, and he was on knifeforums.com. I don't know if you guys
remember
that one. It was big for a while, and then it took a quick and hard decline. But yeah, so I got on there and I was like, holy crap, there's a place online where people just talk about knives, and they show off pictures of their knives, and there's knife makers. I was like, and people like make knives. And I remember I put a little post. There was like a noobs forum, newbies. And I put a post, and, all of a sudden this dude, Jerry Hossam, responds, like, says, welcome. And I hope I said his last name right. I probably didn't. It might be Hossam.
Rhymes with awesome.
But all of a sudden, I realized that there's like knife makers that'll like talk to you, and I think I was just so excited and enthusiastic about it. They gave me a pretty warm welcome. And so I kind of just started chatting on there. And then I thought, I was like, all right, like, this was cool. I bought this kit. I put it together. All I did was glue 2 pieces of wood onto metal and shape the handle, but I want to do more. And so I went and I went to the dollar store, or not the dollar store, the thrift store. And I bought like a stack of just $1 kitchen knives from their bins, just $1 kitchen knives. And I bought, half of them were made in China, half of them were made in Japan. I bought the ones that said they were made in Japan because in my mind, I thought they might be better quality. I could have been completely wrong. I don't know, but
that's where I'd have gone with it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like I said, it's certainly nothing against anything made in China. I mean, shit, the microphone, the computer, and the phone in front of me are all made over there. And
well, you didn't get those at the fucking dollar store either, did you?
That's true.
It was also a little different time, right? I mean, it wasn't terribly long ago, but it was a little while ago. 10 years ago was a little different. But
yeah. And but so I bought those knives, and I was like, all right, they're pretty rough, and I'd kind of reprofile them, and then I'd use that belt grinder and I'd convex the edges One of the big companies that was real popular on that forum, the knife forums, was Bark River Knife and Tool, and they did all convex edges and preached that heavy. And so, and I was like, and you can slack belt it. And to be honest, in my opinion, as someone who's very first learning to make knives, a convex grind with a slack belt is maybe going to give you the cleanest looking results. And so that's, and so I was convexing kitchen blades, reprofiling them, ruining lots of them. I'm really good at ruining shit. But it's a good way to learn. It's a good way to learn, I ruined 2 knives last week in my shop. That sucked. But yeah, so I did that. And then eventually I bought a bar of steel because steel is cheap. It was probably either 01 or 1095 or something like that. And I went and I bought a bar of steel, and it was kind of funny because there was a lot of guys that when they start out, they make file knives,
Oh yeah.
And it seems like so much more work. I never really understood I understand why people make file knives, but I don't understand why inexperienced new people think that that's like a cheaper, easier way to go about it.
I've never understood that one. I've got this random mystery steel. How can I make something out of it? Just buy steel. It's so much cheaper. And you know what it is.
It's so cheap. Yeah. And, and so I ended up building I took my Weber grill and kind of turned it into a makeshift forge. I like drilled a hole in the bottom and I'd hold a fan up to it and I'd fill it with charcoal. And, I'd get I'd take that 1095 and I'd cut a profile and, I'd do some sort of reasonable-ish heat treat in a Weber grill in my backyard. And then one time I set a tree on fire. And so I ended up having to kind of move the whole forge and process a little further away from the house.
Yeah.
The knife ended up coming out sweet though, the tree fire knife. I
like that. The tree fire knife, the forest fire knife.
It's a druidish sacrifice she did there.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but so I was building this knife for my boss at the bar. He was a chef and he wanted this kind of big, like scimitar looking chef knife thing. And I was like, sweet. Yeah, I can try that. And so I did it, but my quench bucket was way too small. And I went in the kitchen and I found, those like aluminum foil, like turkey roasting pan,
the full roasting pans.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I may have one with peanut oil sitting in the back of my shop.
Yeah, so I filled that up with, and I used to quench with motor oil. Yeah, I did things. I don't know, and so anyways, I dip the blade in there, and the oil catches on fire, of course. But because it was that turkey roasting pan, I couldn't get like a flat lid on top to put the fire out, and so there's this huge fire raging under my awning in this turkey roasting pan. And I'm like trying to drag it out so it doesn't set the house on fire. And the oil starts sloshing back and forth. And there's flaming oil. It melted my flip-flops.
Oh,
I didn't get burnt, which was amazing. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
But some of the oil.
Flip-flops are the icing there, man. That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah, the fact that I was wearing flip-flops, right.
Use your PPE, people.
Yes. Yeah.
Those were steel toe flip-flops, so just back off, okay, OSHA guy?
Allegedly flip-flops. I was allegedly.
Asbestos flip-flops.
Asbestos flip-flops.
But yeah, and then
Lord.
So anyway, so after that incident, I kind of built a little cinder block forge at the back of the driveway, and I didn't have any more incidents. And that's another thing with new guys is thinking you should like heat treat it yourself. Fucking send that out. There's people that are really good at it, and it's not that much money. It's so much easier than trying to do it yourself. So if there's any new guys listening, learn a lesson from me. Don't set trees on fire, and probably just send your shit out to be heat treated for a while.
Don't melt your flip flops. They're your friend.
Yeah. But anyway, so I was kind of just doing it in the back of the house, and I was posting pictures on the knife forums, and all of a sudden, I'd been doing it for about I was 25, I remember. So I've been doing it for about a year or so, and just making knives. My very first one I ever made, I gave away to my buddy Joe, again, who I've mentioned a couple times. He still has it, the very first knife I ever actually made. And I was just kind of making them and giving them away. And then one time I posted a picture on that knife forums, and a dude was like, "How much do you want for that?" I was like, "Well, I'm not."
Whoa.
Yeah, I was like, "I'm not really that good. Like, I'm just like making them to learn. I'm not selling them. I didn't want to just start selling shit." And he's like, I understand what you're saying, but I like how that looks. And if you were going to sell it, how much would you sell it for? And I looked at the knife and thought about, like what I'd done. And I was pretty proud. I said, I don't know, like $85. And he's like, cool, what's your PayPal address? And the guy's like, what's PayPal? So I created a PayPal account, and this dude shot over $85, and I shipped the knife off. And I remember standing there thinking, being like, holy shit, you can, yeah, like I can sell knives. Like I just sold a fucking knife. Someone bought my knife that I made. And it was just the coolest thing. And that was when I knew that moment what I wanted to do with my life.
Awesome.
A lot of kids, they have dreams of this or that. And, and I'd been playing music my whole life. And I never imagined that I would be a rock star. I mean, of course I would have gladly accepted it, but that was never,
right.
That wasn't like my dream. I just didn't really I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then, like I said, when I was 25, I'd been making knives for maybe a year or so. And I sold that knife, and I was like, well, this is it. I want to learn how to make good knives and sell them. And that was just, like I said, the first time that I ever was like, I want to do this. This is what I have to do. And so I just kept at it. I just kept making I figured the only way to get better was just to make a lot of fucking knives. And so I made a lot of knives, and I generally sold them to my customers at the bar.
Yeah.
And it worked out great. I'd sell little fixed blade neck knives for $50-$60. And, I remember one dude, he ran a little company pulling dents, I think, out of cars, which is actually a really lucrative way to make a living if you're good at it.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. Body work. You can work.
Yeah. And he would chase hailstorms, and he would do like hail repair. And I don't know if you guys, if you've been to Colorado and you see it, we have huge hailstorms out here that drop like golf ball size hail. And there's cars that drive around just looking like golf balls, man. Like they get destroyed. And this dude would go in the wintertime when it wasn't hail season here, he'd actually go work in Australia.
Oh, wow.
And then come back. Yeah, all that's completely useless information in my story. Anyways,
was he one of the dentless repair guys where he's got all those funky shaped tools and he reaches in through the fender well and
probably
can work dents out?
I don't know. I don't know how he worked. I knew what he liked to drink. Cool. Like I said, I was a bartender selling knives to customers on Colfax.
Yeah, you knew the important part.
Yep. But yeah, and he's like, "Can I get 12 of them?" He's like, "I got this crew of guys."
Wow.
And I was like, "For real?" He's like, "Yeah, I want like 12 of them. I want to give one to each of my guys as a holiday present." I was like, they're not like that good. Like they were functional because, but they weren't like good. And so, I made that guy like 12 knives for probably $50 a piece. And that was a pretty big boost. I think I bought maybe a Grizzly 1x42 with the money that I made off of his, because I think like the switch on my 1x30 burnt out. But yeah, man, I was just doing them with really basic equipment, just some files, sandpaper. I didn't even have a drill press then still. I was still using that hand drill, which was, I don't know why I didn't buy a drill press. That was stupid. I do that a lot. Do you ever like you'll do something forever because you're familiar with it, and then you'll buy a drill press and you're like, why the fuck didn't I do this a year ago?
Yeah.
Or like I used to cut all my jimping with chainsaw files.
Oh yeah.
Because I worked in the tree industry for a bit. And so I had a bunch of chainsaw files. I used to cut, and then all of a sudden one day I was like, I should try using my Dremel. I was like, oh my God, this is so much easier. Like, why have I been doing that for so long?
I did the same thing for a very long time. It worked well.
With the chainsaw files?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, do that. Plus,
you know why you did it, Brian? Because it builds character. That's why.
I guess I could sharpen the fuck out of a chainsaw, though. I was real good at that. But yeah, so I was, like I said, I was working at the bar, and I was making the knives, and I was playing music. Life was pretty good. I had moved up into the foothills outside of town, and so I was like, living in the mountains. And I had a girlfriend at the time that lived downtown right by my work. And so what I would do is like, I'd work because I was at a bar, so it's late at night. I spend the night at her place, wake up at 6 a.m, drive 40 minutes up to my shop, work there for 2 hours, drive back down 40 minutes to downtown, go back to work at the bar. I just, any spare minute that I had that I could just be in the shop, I was in it. And it was just, you know, you just find something and you're just so excited. And every knife you make, when you finish it, you're like, yes, this is awesome. And
it was just pure creation without without the idea of I don't know, that it could be bad or that it could be better, I guess. That those moments of when you're just creating without the neurosis of it paying bills or things like that was just pure joy, because you didn't have this, it's not good enough, it's not, you know, you didn't compare it to a bunch of other shit. It was just like, I made this. And that was the only feeling to it. And it was awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. And, and I was doing that, and I would do a lot of, actually, I think, Michael, I saw you made some fixed blades a few weeks ago where you just took the Sharpie to the steel, right? Did I see that, or am I completely wrong?
Oh no.
And that's, I would do that a lot. You know, I'd have like my designs were just like in my head. Like if I was going to make somebody, I don't even remember what the fuck I'd call them, but, you know, I just like draw it out. And so each one would be just like a little bit different because I wasn't smart enough to make templates. And then a lot of times you just be like, I'm going to make a bushcrafter, and you'd make a bushcrafter and it'd be little. And you're like, it's a pocket bushcrafter. And,
oh yeah. No limits.
I still have the pocket bushcrafter actually.
And it's,
taking away the constraints is a real thing. Right? I mean, when they talk about when they talk about ideation or these little creative camp kind of things that companies do, right, when they're trying to develop software or new technology or whatever, that's exactly what they're going for, is that state of mind where you're not constrained by, you know, I have to do this to pay a bill or there's some specific requirement or whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes what comes out of it is some wacky shit, and sometimes what comes out of it is magic, right? Like straight up magic.
Yeah, no, sometimes I'll look back at the designs I used to make and I'll be like, man, that wasn't half bad. You know, it's a decent looking fixed blade.
Yeah.
And so I was just, you know, making as many as possible, you know, and then I discovered I could send knives out for heat treat. And I realized that, you know, like Peter's Heat Treat, they'd charge, you could send them 5 knives or 100 knives, and it'd be the same basic charge up to like 49 pounds or something like that. And so I'd order up a shitload of 154 CM because I was like, I can work with stainless now. And I'd literally like send them like 40 knives, and maybe each one was completely different. And they'd come back, and then I'd be like, what was I thinking? And I'd reshape it after it was hardened, you know, keeping the pinhole centered as best I could. And I did that for a long time. And then, I was my boss at the bar, the one who cooked, who was kind of into knives a little bit. There was a Denver custom knife show. It was called it was a PKA show. And it was a small little local knife show that, didn't really have a ton of stuff that I was super interested in. It was a lot of kind of the more traditional knives, lots of mirror polish, stag handle stuff, which is awesome stuff. But just at the time, not super my thing. But I'm walking around the show, and I've got one of my knives that I made, you know, a little neck knife on, proudly displayed for anyone that was brave enough to ask about it. And I was just begging for someone to be brave enough. And finally, this guy does come up, and his name was Ted. And he was wearing a T-shirt that said the USN on it.
Yeah.
And we started just chit-chatting. I showed him my knife. He's like, hey, that's pretty good. You should check out this place, the USN. And I'm like, USN, like the U.S. Navy? Like, what the fuck? I no idea what the USN was. And he's like, no, it's an online knife forum. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because I knew knifeforums.com at that point. And so I went home that day and I created a USN account, and I was completely overwhelmed. And that was my first experience. Like, that was almost my first experience with custom knives, was logging into the USN and seeing what was there. Making a folder had always been like something that seemed like it was way cool, but way beyond anything I could do. Cause I'm not that smart. I don't have a background in machining or anything like that. You know, I was a fucking bartender on Colfax.
Right.
And so I log into the USN, and it was just mind blown, you know. And then I see they have local USN meet and greets, and luckily, the Rocky Mountain chapter was a pretty strong one, and there was 3 or 4 meet and greets a year. And I go to the first one, which is just in downtown Littleton. And I go there, and there's, probably a bunch of guys that you guys know.
Yep.
Absolutely,
Ted and Ed and Mark, a whole bunch of people, Matt as well.
Right.
And so I go down there, and at my very first USN meet and greet, there's always door prizes and stuff. And I walk away with this cool little camouflage beanie with like a little bulldog on it, and it says "Crying Knives." and I was like, this is a cool little hat. I was like, I don't know who Crying Knives is, but I like this.
Yeah.
And,
we don't either.
Not anymore.
and actually, I've told Tom this story, luckily. But so I have this hat, and I go and I look up, Crying Knives, and I was just blown away because I was like, here's someone else that's making like the coolest little fixed blades, because Tom makes a lot of small fixed blades. And I love that. And back then, that's what I was into, because I wanted to make a knife I could carry every day. And I just, I wasn't really about to have a 4.5-inch blade, just big knife, just walking around Denver. It just wasn't where I was at. And so I focused on making a lot of little knives. And then here's Tom, and I see his knives, and they're smaller, and I'm just like, this is so cool. And Tom kind of became my litmus test a little bit, where I'd look at my knives, and then I'd look at a picture of his knives, and I'd say, all right, what is it that he's doing that makes his shit so much more awesome than me? And I would kind of, I certainly wouldn't like say, oh, he does that, I'm going to do that. But it would just be like, oh, look how he cleans up the top of the handles. I need to pay more attention to cleaning up the top of my handles. Or, look how his plunge lines are just nice and straight. I need to pay more attention to doing that stuff. And that was my first USN meet and greet. And the USN was really, those meet and greets were important for me, not just because of the people that I would meet, but because I would use them to push myself. Like every meet and greet I went to, which was 3 or 4 times a year, I went to all of them that I could. I would always try and bring something better than I made before. I wanted to bring something new. I wanted the people that saw this shitty knife that I made 3 months ago to see this slightly less shitty knife that I just made last week.
Right.
And so I'd go to all of them, and I would, like I said, I'd really use them as honestly, I do the same with shows now. Every show I go to, I really try and bring something new for me. But it was one of the meet and greets, and I think it was up at, I'm at Ed's house, and this dude walks in, and he's got a big old fucking mohawk. He's punk rock as shit. And I look at him, and I'm like, I don't know who the fuck that guy is, but I like him. And he's my people. Yeah, I was like, this guy, he looks cool. He doesn't fit in with what the rest of them look like. I was like, let's go make friends. And it was Matt Martin was his name, and he's the owner operator of Vehement Knives. And I, you guys talked about, the 3 knives, the one that you would never get rid of. One of mine is a knife that Matt made for me. I think he is just fucking awesome. I love his designs. I love how his knives work. He manages to have blades that have a pretty thick grind on them that cut just better than anything. And I'm like, in my mind, it doesn't make sense. The grind can't be that thick and cut that well, but it just does. And Matt was the first person that told me my grind sucked. And that was important. Like having a friend that can look at your shit and to your face say, man, your handles are good, but your grinds suck. You got to do better. That was so important, because it wasn't some fucking dipshit anonymous asshole talking shit on Instagram. It was an actual friend who will look you in your eyes and say, yo, this sucks. And you're like, thank you. Now I know what I need to work on. And, constructive criticism, it can really help you.
It can,
so long as it's constructive and, coming from a place of respect. Yeah. And
well, that's the key, right? When it's from someone that you respect or that you look up to or care for or whatever, at whatever level it is, right? It's different. It means something.
Yeah. And it meant a lot, for like a half a second, I was like, oh, but then I was like, all right, let's go make some better knives, and Matt really helped me a lot. Beyond just telling me I sucked. he was the first person I ever like did a collaboration with, and he showed me how he would grind and the type of belts that he uses. And I think he's an incredible freehand grinder. And so we really spent a lot of time together and really coming up and learning and making knives. And I say part of the reason I pushed off to doing folders is because I just couldn't keep up with him in fixed blades. His were just, if anyone out there hasn't really heard of Vehement Knives out of the UP of Michigan right now, you should absolutely check them out. They're the toughest. They're awesome knives. I really like them.
So at the time, Matt was in Colorado with you, right?
Yeah. So he was living up just probably about an hour north of where I was at. And he had, he had like a professional looking shop. And I just kind of had like a shitty, thrown together workshop in a shed. And so I would always be driving up to Longmont, up to his shop. And me and him, his wife Jenna, and their daughter Dio, we all became friends and spent a good amount of time together. And he really kind of just showed me so much stuff, just new tools and how to use it. How to flare pins, flare the tubes for a handle to keep it on. Just how to be a better grinder, just all kinds of stuff.
That's awesome.
Very cool. So for people who don't know, so Matt Martin, Vehement Knives, there's actually another podcast. I don't know if we've mentioned them in the past, but I know they've talked about us several times. Matt and Jim Stewart also run a podcast called Behind the Blade. So if you're interested in Matt's work or you want to learn more about him and his perspective on stuff, check out that Behind the Blades podcast. And that kind of interesting parallel to this whole thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I've been, like I said, just learning and getting better. At this point I had a little customer base built up. I think I had like a 3-week lead time.
Nice.
Yeah. And, I was like, I've got 3 knives on order right now. I was really stoked about it. But so I was doing that. And, like I said, I discovered the USN. So I was getting more involved in the whole world of that. And then at one of the USN meet and greets, I met a group of local dudes who were all on Facebook, and they're like, yo, do you know about like, EDC Underground? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then it turns out there's a whole social media knife, beyond just the forums. And so I got introduced to the Facebook groups then. And then I'm on Facebook and I'm, like I said, joining the groups, this and that. And I posted up pictures, and all of a sudden I see it, fucking Sean Kendrick liked your knife. And it's like, no fucking way. And that was, that was a pretty cool thing. When
I'm pretty sure what Brian meant to say is that was the most metal moment of my life to date.
I mean, there's been a couple pretty metal moments, and that's definitely up there.
Right up there.
Yeah.
And you ran a chainsaw for a living, so take that as you will.
I did, yeah. So I'd been working at the bar, and I became bar manager, which means you're now available to get laid off. And so I got laid off from the bar, which was honestly one of the best things that ever happened to me, because, the money's good in the bar industry and it can be kind of hard to get out. So I got laid off from the bar, and at the time, all I was doing was just making fixed blade knives and playing music. And it was, I was like, life is amazing, but really life sucked because you don't have any money. And so I did a couple other jobs in the meantime after, looking for a new job. And then one of my old customers at the bar, who knew I had a reasonable work ethic and wasn't an absolute idiot, he was the vice president of a tree company out here in Colorado. And he asked me if he's like, you still looking for a job? And I was like, yep. And he's like, can you drive? And I'm like, it's about the only thing. And
I got that.
I was like, I can drive. Yeah. And so I got hired on at the tree company. And that was, again, just another stage, because I hated the job. I'm afraid of heights, and climbing trees with a chainsaw is really a stressful thing when you're afraid of heights. Yeah. And so, but again, I knew it was like, I should go find a real job. There's that like air quotation marks going on, the real job.
Traditional employment.
Yeah. With, and, like where they could pay you enough money to live and pay your bills too. But the end goal is I was like, I don't want to go get a real job. I want to make knives. And so I kind of labored on with the tree company for about not quite 3 years. And at the end of it, I was making fucking $13.50 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bullshit. I was, yeah.
Between Birch and I don't think you get either of us more than 3 or 4 feet off the ground for $13.50 an hour, let alone a chainsaw. Man.
It's going to take a whole lot more money to get me to touch either of them.
My brother was a roofer, and I helped him a couple of winters. And I don't know how or why that. I don't think I got paid for shit doing that. I was just helping him out. No way I would go back and do that stuff. I hate heights.
No, and actually it got a lot worse for me now. Like before I did the job, I was like your average afraid of heights, like a reasonable.
Right.
Like, yeah, of course you're high. It's a little scary. And then at the job, I got a little bit better and a little bit better. And then near the end, it completely reversed and it got really bad. And now it really fucks with me. A couple years ago at Blade Show, I was on like the 11th floor. Mm-hmm. And there's that big, huge atrium. And I had to keep a hand on the outside wall. I was having serious anxiety issues just trying to get to my hotel room. I was like, I wasn't even nervous about the show. Just please let me get to my room safe.
Yeah, it's that weird shit. And that vertigo you get looking to the side. Do you get that weird call of the void crap? You ever get that anxiety?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a weird one, man.
Just thinking about it. But yeah, so I stuck it out with the tree company. I wasn't making shit for money, but then we would get like 3 weeks off from around the Christmas, New Year's time because it was winter as well. And climbing trees in the winter sucks even more than climbing them in the summer. And in 3 weeks, my company had really kind of picked up a little bit of momentum. When you can really devote your full energy to something, it's really going to do better than when you only devote half of your energy to something. And, and like I said, at that time, I'd still been, working Facebook and kind of building up more customers and, good stuff like that. And then I had this 3-week break and it seemed like in 3 weeks, my Facebook group jumped from like 200 to 300 people. And,
wow.
Yeah. And I'd gotten a whole bunch of new orders that had come in and I was able to like make money and you get better and faster. And I went back to work for 1 week and I just quit. I just hated it. I was so miserable. I was like, why am I doing this? I was like, I had nobody depending on me. I had no kids, dogs, girlfriend, nothing. And I figured, I was like, if I'm going to be so broke, because when you make it $13.50 an hour after insurance and taxes, you're not bringing home $10 an hour.
No.
And I was like, if I'm going to not be able to eat and pay the bill, like if I have to choose between eating or paying the bills, I want to do this working for myself. Like I can be just as broke and not have to go deal with assholes and climb trees.
Yep.
And so I went back to work for a week and I gave my boss a 1 week notice. He's like, you can't do 2 weeks. And I'm like, no, I can't. I was like, I don't even know if I can make it through this 1 week. I respected the guy in the company and, you don't want to just like walk off the job, but I couldn't give him a 2 weeks notice. And I quit. And all of a sudden it was like, all right, let's make knives. And I was still playing music and stuff like that. And I picked up a small part-time job 1 day a week at a spot that a friend of mine owned here in Colorado. But, here I was 5 days a week in the shop making knives and life was awesome. I was so excited.
Wow.
Yeah. I did that. And then, I started getting this idea in my head. I was like, if I really keep at this, I could make a folder. I was like, I just really wanted to. And I was like, I want to learn. And I was like, all right, what am I going to do? And I was like, I got to get a mill. And so I went and I bought a Grizzly mill and it came and I plugged it in and tried to turn it on and it didn't work. And I was really kind of mystified and bummed. And I knew that the machine probably worked, but I just have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. So I was probably doing something wrong. And it turns out I was because after I'd owned the mill for 3 months, I moved this little plastic safety flap and I heard a little click.
Oh, geez.
When I closed the safety flap, I just heard that little click and I was like, wait a minute. That click, wait a minute. That click fucking meant something. And And all of a sudden, I pressed the power button, and the motherfucker turned right on. And
Wow.
yeah, that's how good I am at machining. I didn't even know how to turn the fucking thing on for 3 months, and it was just closing the safety window, which of course I promptly removed because it was right in the way.
Well, yeah.
So I had the mill, and then I still didn't know what to do with it, so I didn't do shit.
And right then, Brian grabbed his bass and wrote the song, OSHA Took Away My Baby.
No, OSHA.
Fuck safety.
Allegedly took that safety screen off. Again, let's
no, don't do that at home, kids. We don't condone that.
No, I'm really very not strict, but PPE is extremely important for me. When I was working at the tree company, my second week on the job, I had my hard hat on, I had my safety glasses on, but my job for the day was loading logs into the back of a dump truck. I was like, I can do this job. You want me to carry heavy shit? I can carry heavy shit, and I can drive your vehicle. And this one log, I lifted it up over my head to throw it in the back of the truck, and the tree that we had cut down was live. Usually we cut down dead trees. And this live tree, a whole bunch of tree sap got mixed with sawdust, and it plopped right onto my helmet, and it dripped down right into my eye hole. And
oof.
And when it first happened, it was a little bit like irritated and annoying, but it wasn't awful. And as the day went on, it got worse and worse. And I couldn't sleep that night. And I forced myself to go to work the next morning because, you got a job, you go to fucking work. And,
right.
and I had like guys holding me down, blasting my eye with the eye wash kit in the shop, just trying to help out, do whatever we can do. And I was like, I think I can do this. And I'm out on the job, and the guy in the tree is dropping tree limbs all around me, and I can't see to avoid them. And all of a sudden, one landed like really close, and I was like, "All right, this isn't going to work." So I called the vice president of the company. And I was like, "Hey, man, I think I need to see a doctor or something." I was like, I don't think I can work.
Right.
And they're like, "Yeah, I would have clocked out 2 hours ago." And I was like, "Oh. I was just trying to be the tough guy. I was new. You want to put on a good showing."
Oh, yeah.
So anyways, I ended up having to go to the hospital, and forgive me, I got a little tickle in my throat. So I go to the hospital, and they end up putting this thing on my eye that's like a big plastic contact lens with a tube coming out of the middle of it, and it was connected to a 12-ounce like bag of saline solution. And they're pumping this saline solution like through the inside of my eye socket, and like chunks of wood are coming out, and, like goo.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't super painful, but just really uncomfortable,
Yeah.
And so because of that, I am extremely diligent about eye protection. I always wear my respirator. I'm pretty tough on that.
Yes. See, you wear the same glasses as I. The really, really nice looking glasses.
Oh yeah,
The fancy.
Stylish.
I'm real stylish. My wife likens me to a serial killer with them on. But yeah, no, I got the side shields. I even keep a spare set in my truck just because you never know. Like I put fucking eye protection on when I mow the lawn.
Yeah,
but
like you're gonna be driving and need to make a knife. What's the never know part of that?
So actually, there's a couple times I've gone to work at a buddy's shop, and I got there. Yeah, they just didn't really have any safety glasses for me to use or anything like that. So I keep them around. Not everybody's as diligent on their PPE as I am. But
it's a real deal, man. Once you get jacked up, even a little bit, right? It's a very quick reminder. Like this shit's real.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it can seriously fuck you up for the rest of your life if you're not careful. And it's no joke. Not everybody gets that kind of warning shot.
No, I got that. And then another one, I was using a wire wheel in the shop, and one of the wires flew out and stuck into my lip. Like I had to pull it.
Yeah.
It was sticking out of my lip. And I was like, oh my God. I started wearing snowboarding goggles on the wire wheel after that. I am not fucking around.
Yeah, those don't play. I mean, I've worn glasses since I've been making knives, like prescription glasses.
Yeah.
But I learned pretty early on that they're even worse than wearing like full-on safety glasses, because it'll bounce off the inside and you lose your ability to have your reflexes stop it, because your reflexes are pretty good. We don't wearing glasses, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I had a couple pieces of metal stuck in my eye. I got tired of that shit. So I used to wear like similar to that, almost like snowboarding glasses.
Yeah.
Over my damn prescription glasses. It was pretty not cool.
No, one of the things I've been talking about for about 3 years now is getting some prescription safety glasses made up.
That's what I wear.
Yep.
I've never done it. I don't know why. I still wear my contacts with just my safety glasses over them. But prescription safety glasses would be pretty slick.
Man, hit up that RX Safety, all you people out there with the prescription. They're cheap. I think I pay like $100, and
Really?
that's about it. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that before, Birch. RX Safety.
I'll have to.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to go check that out because, and part of the thing is now is with my safety glasses, every time I'm done with an operation, I take them off and I set them down. And then when I want to do the next thing, I have to go find them, which usually takes at least 2 minutes for me because I'm like that.
20 for me. So.
And so I feel as though if I just kept them on all the time, it might save a bit of looking.
My problem
efficiency, they call that.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to go to like a kid's like thing, because I'll be working in the shop and then I'll shower up or whatever. I'm afraid I'm going to end up wearing them accidentally to like a kid's function or something.
Yeah, man, I'm going to get some cool ones. They're going to be like, who's that guy with those glasses? But they're kind of cool. We'll see.
I look like a bass fisherman without all the, the shading.
Bring that
like
in.
That side protection.
Get it in there.
Bert's got some prescription gargoyles. There, man.
Hell yeah, man.
Gargoyles.
I don't like nothing.
Straight up Dale Earnhardt, baby.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing getting in my eyes.
No, man, that's important. But
So Brian, once you solve the mystery of the grizzly,
yes.
let's just call it that, because that's a much more elegant way to say what happened to
the
you.
mystery of the
You
grizzly.
solved the mystery of the
Yes, sir.
grizzly.
And then I still didn't use it. Because it turns out you can't just buy a mill. You have to spend just as much on collets and tooling and all of this
What?
stuff to use it. Yeah, I know, it's a fucking bummer.
That's a dirty secret nobody talks about.
Fucking preposterous.
Yeah,
You had three months to save up for it because you weren't using the damn thing.
yeah, but I didn't even know I needed to save up for it because I'm like I said, I had no background.
Damn thing showed up broke.
So basically, I've been making knives, and I got this mill that, I want to start working towards, but I don't really know how. So I started making a couple little friction folders. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I can learn how to tap a hole. Like just, it's like I'm not making a full on folder, but I can learn skills that will apply to it. I started learning how to grind swedges as well. It's like, I want to have sweat, so I would start learning different aspects that I know, like I can't put it all together right now, but down the road I'll be able to. So I'm learning all this new stuff. I'm really trying to push my knives, always trying to get cleaner, get better, make the best cutting knife. And then, like I said, every now and then my fucking Sean Kendrick liked my picture. Like, oh my God. And I'm sorry to be this way on you, Sean. I'm not trying to be weird.
My
but
ego eats it up. You're good, bud.
Straight up fan
It was pretty huge.
Yeah.
And then the dude that I was living with, he owned the house, and I rented the garage and the basement from him for a real cheap amount of money. He was selling the house. And I was living in Denver, not making a ton of money. Denver, in the meantime, had just exploded with the rent prices. And I just knew that, like, on my own, I can't afford to rent a house. And I was like, I've been living in the city for 8 years, and I have no real connection to stay. And it was at that point that I decided I was going to move back to Michigan. And and so I start planning that move. And in the meantime, I decided to go to my first real knife show, which was The Gathering. I think it was 6 years ago, maybe something like that. I forget which gathering it was exactly, but I'm hanging out, and I went with like a group of local dudes. I became friends with the kind of the local knife crew around, and we all kind of went out there together. And I brought a bunch of my knives with me. Not a bunch. I had like 4 or 5 of them. And I didn't have any intention of selling the knives. That wasn't the plan. But when you're a guy kind of learning to make knives, you're going to a knife show, you bring your fucking knife with you. And
yeah, no, that's what any decent brown bagger would say. Go on.
exactly.
Good thing Tom ain't here.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, and
Tom is eating turkey right now, going, God damn!
I was the
brown
I
bag
swear, I just heard something.
I was the most unsuccessful brown bagger of all time. On top of that, but anyways, so I'm at the show, and it's right outside. You know, there's like the long hallway that you kind of go into to walk to the room where the show is, and there's just kind of that open mezzanine area outside there. And I remember I was just sitting down, kind of leaning back against a post, just chilling, and fucking again, Sean Kendrick walks up, and I say, "Hey," and dude, you just like sat down and said, "What's up?" next to me. And I was just like, holy shit.
You were standing in my smoking spot.
Well, listen, I'll be hanging out there again next year. But yeah, and you know, like you guys, again, in the episode with Billy Cho, where you talked to him, a lot of things kind of resonated with me, where, you know, Rando and Loveless, Ron Lake, those guys, like I'd heard their names and I knew who they were. But when I was doing this, 5-6 years ago, they weren't who I looked up to. It was guys like you guys. It was you guys who I'm sitting talking to right now, who were like the holy shit. And so yeah, all of a sudden now Sean sits down and talks to me, and I was just like, pretty blown away, because as a young maker who doesn't have their foot in anybody's door, someone that's established just coming to say what's up means a lot, or at least it did to me. And
right.
And so literally, I fly home from Vegas, and I got home Sunday at like 4, drove straight to the U-Haul place from the airport, picked up a U-Haul, loaded it up that night, and the next morning at 6 a.m. I hit the road to move back to Michigan, which ended up being one of the more fortuitous career moves I'd made, albeit I had no idea at the time. So I moved back to Michigan, and I figured out how to turn on my mill, which was really cool. And,
awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go for this. And I just have to learn a little bit about something. And there was another guy that I'd known in Michigan, Fernando Medina. And I'd been just chit-chatting with him. And Fernando, he'd been making knives, folding knives and stuff for a while. And he kind of just clued me in on a couple things, like how you could use a Dremel cutoff wheel to cut a lock bar. I didn't know how the fuck you cut a lock bar. And so he kind of gave me a little bit of guidance, and he was pretty close in Michigan, and things were going okay. I kind of made one folder, and it didn't really work, but it might have worked ish. And I just really had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, all right, I have so many questions. I need to call somebody I know. And I was like, well, I don't know anybody. I was like, well, but Sean was kind of nice to you that one time. Maybe he'd answer a question. And so I send Sean a message, and I was like, hey man, I need to buy like a drill bit. Which one should I buy? And you're like, dude, you were always so nice and gracious. You're like, well, for that size bit, this is what I use. And I was like, thanks. And then it turns out, you need to know everything about everything, because knowing just one drill to use doesn't really help you. You need to know all the drills. And so I had another question, and I'm like, shit, I'm going to have to bug him again. So I sent a message on Facebook, and again, Sean, gracious as always, responds. And then 20 minutes later, I'm like, oh my God, I have another question. This guy's going to fucking kill me. And so I'm like, hey man, I'm so fucking sorry. With an end mill, like what type of end mill should one buy? And I'll never forget, like you just typed out, you said, man, why don't you stop asking so many fucking questions? Come on down here for a week, and I'll teach you what you need to know. I'll show you what I can. And I was like, you fucking shitting me, bro? Like in my head, I said that. I was like, for real? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, you'll actually let me come down and like hang out in your shop? You're like, yeah, come on down. And that couldn't have really happened at a better time, because that was like December 30th of 2015. And I remember after I moved back to Michigan, I wasn't playing in the band. I'd kind of lost any other source of income, and it was just all on knives. And I had $75 to my name. It was, I'll never forget, January 1st, 2016, I had $75 to my name. So I went and I bought $60 worth of groceries. I put like $8 worth of gas in my piece of shit Jeep, and I had enough money to ship off the next knife, and kind of what had happened to get me in that situation was this one kind of big company with some people. The names aren't important, but they had kind of led me to believe that I was going to become somewhat of a production fixed blade in-house custom person, where they laid out these plans, and I was going to be making 40 fixed blades a week, and these dealer was going to buy them, and everybody was going to have my knives across the world, and I was going to be making tons of money, and just none of that happened. And so with these, it wasn't like a pipe dream, because it could have worked out. They didn't lie to me. There was nothing that was said, falsely or maliciously, but just things were just taking a long time, and it just wasn't really working. And so I'd stopped taking orders from customers because I was planning on this, and I'd stopped buying just little materials because I was planning on this, and I'd started buying machinery to work towards that, like buffers and just all kinds of stuff that you needed. And it led me to having no steel, no orders, $75 to my name, and just being like, fuck. And so, so right then, like I said, it was right when Sean offered to come down to show me something. And I was like, all right. And I was like, I got to figure some shit out right quick, and then I'll get back to you. I was just blown away by the opportunity. And so I had talked to this one dealer, and this guy ordered like 24 of my fixed blades. And it was like right, the very beginning of January. I'm like, sweet. So like I said, I had the like $8 left to ship out a knife. So what I did was I took a couple of my old fixed blades, busted the handles off them, reground the blades, refinished everything, made a completely new knife out of it, sold a couple of those, and then I had enough money to buy material to make more knives and to survive.
Right.
So I spent the month of January 2016. I made this guy 24 knives, and I believe I got paid like $2,200 for it. And it was a lot of fucking work. It was a lot of work. And in the meantime, I'd kind of been, talking with you, Sean, and we'd set up a couple dates. And then the first week of February, I shipped those knives out on Friday. The guy PayPal'd me that night, which was like the best feeling ever. Like, oh my God, I can like live again. I have some money. And then that Monday I headed down to your place, Sean. And I'll actually never forget. It was Sunday before. I was at my friend's house, and you sent me a message like, hey, do you got time for a quick phone call? It's the night before. And my heart drops. I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna have to cancel, cause that's like what you're assuming. And so I call up, and, Sean, you're like, hey buddy. And you had called to see if I had any dietary restrictions or if I needed any special food, because you were going to the market, and you just need, I said, you're like, if you had any dietary restrictions or anything like that, you just wanted to make sure that, you could accommodate, which was, I was like giddy, you know what I'm saying? Like I hung up the phone and was just laughing because I was just ready for this moment of despair, or like, my dream of getting to go check out this guy's shop. It's like about to be crushed. It's like, oh no, just want to know, like, you got any special Twinkies or something like that.
Yeah, like, you like the Gardettos mix? You want a bag of Gardettos?
Yeah,
mix?
No,
right.
And
yeah.
And so that next morning, I jumped in the Jeep, and it was 6.5 hours from where I was living in Grand Rapids down to your place, and man, that week absolutely changed my life, Sean. I will forever be in a debt of gratitude to you for that.
Pay it forward, buddy.
Yeah, man. Guys, it's kind of got me over here for a second. It does, because
Brian promised not to be the first maker to cry on our show.
Yeah, I promise. I'm gonna have to do my best, drink a little more beer over here. But
right.
But it did, man.
Crying drunk, nice.
But no, it really did. I mean, I came back from your place with that first knife that you held my hands and walked me through, and it's sitting on the desk in front of me right now. It's one of the most, like, if my house is on fire, I'm going in for that fucking knife. How I feed my family is based off of what I learned from you in that week. and that was really huge for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I came home with a knife that I had made, and I think I took about 4 or 5 pages of notes of just, like this size drill, and then you do this, just a complete list and order of like how to make a knife, and I never looked at it once. I was so like enamored and paid so close attention that I never even, and sometimes like taking the notes, like writing it down solidifies it in your mind more.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But man, I just, like I said, I came home and I had posted a picture, of course, of the knife that we had made, and my little Facebook group lit up instantly. And so I came home and I started ordering just everything I needed. I ordered a Tapmatic, which was the single smartest thing I've ever done.
Fucking A-right,
Because I could not fucking tap shit. Luckily, I've learned how to since then. But I ordered the Tapmatic. I got I wrote down every little end mill drill that you use so I could get going. And literally, I mean, as soon as I ordered that stuff, the day I got home, it showed up a few days later, and it was just fucking on. All of a sudden, I could afford to feed myself. All of a sudden, people paid a little more attention because, making fixed blades solely is tough when the market is just so much greater for custom folders, I feel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so I come home with this knife, and I'd heard that there was this guy, Jeremy Marsh, that kind of lived close to me or something. I didn't really know, but a buddy of mine who had tattooed me a decade ago or two, he told me, yeah, my cousin Jeremy, he makes knives. And I'm like, oh, cool. What's his name? He's like, Jeremy Marsh. And I'm like, I'll check out his website. And so I assumed he was just some guy like me, fucking making knives. And I go and I check out his website, and I'm like, holy shit, this is not just some guy like me making knives. It was pretty incredible. So I come home, and like I said, from your place, and that was middle of February. And then a friend of mine who I talked to again on Facebook, because being active in the social media scene is so important, I guess. It's just how you meet people and network these days. Yeah. But this fella that I'd met just chit-chatting named Stuart Ashner, I saw him post a thing in town. He's like, oh, I'm at Jeremy Marsh's house. And you know how it'll tag the location? It's at like Ada, Michigan. And I'm like, oh, fuck, that's close. And so
right.
So I sent Stu a Facebook message. I'm like, Stu, it's Brian. I know you don't know me, but we chit-chatted one time or another. I was like, hey, man, next time you're in town, I think you're pretty close. We should grab a beer. And he just doesn't respond. And he doesn't respond. And then I can see the bitch is active. And then 5 minutes later, he writes back. He goes, I'm at Jeremy Marsh's place. He says you should come over right now. And I'm like, okay. And it was 10 at night. I was in my pajamas on the couch, probably with a slice of pizza in my hand, just straight chilling. And Stu's like, yeah, Jeremy Marsh says you should come on over. And so I get up, I put some fucking blue jeans on. I went to the store and bought a 6-pack of IPA because I had learned through social media that if you're hanging out with Marsh, you better bring some fucking beer. And I'm not going to show up empty-handed. So like I said, 10 at night, I put some pants on, buy a 6-pack, and Stu had texted me the address, and I put it in my GPS, and it's 10 minutes away. And I'm like, what? I was like, oh my God, like this move to Michigan, it was just so, like I said, fortuitous. It allowed me to drive to Sean's place. And then as well, here I am 10 minutes from, motherfucking Jeremy Marsh. So I go over to his place, and it was one of the more intimidating moments of my life walking into his shop. He has a big, huge shop, and, he's got a presence to match that. Marsh has there's a presence about him. And it was pretty crazy. And so I meet the guy, and I show him the folder that I'd made with you, Sean. And he looks at me, he's like, so you going to Blade Show? And I'm like, I was thinking about it. It'd be really cool. I've always wanted to check it out. He's like, no, do you got a table? Are you going to Blade Show? And I was like, no, man, I can't do that. I'd never done a knife show. I was just like, I didn't even know how. And I'm one of those people that if I don't know how, I just sometimes don't do it, like turning on the mill. So he's like, well, me and Jim Burke got a booth down there. You want to get in on it? And I was like, what? What do you mean? He's like, yeah, you bring a few knives and set up at our booth. And I remember looking at my wristwatch and looking back up at him. I said, motherfucker, it is 11 p.m. on March 31st. You got one more hour before April Fool's kick in. Do not be playing with my emotion. Like, that ain't even cool, like to offer me some shit like that. It's not even April Fool's. You gotta wait one more hour. And he's like, no, I'm serious. I'll call Jim right now. And so he calls up, Jim, who obviously I by this point, heard of and knew who he was. And he's like, yeah, if you want in, you're in. And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And I'd made nice. Not that many knives. And so I go home and I'm like, I got to order supplies. I got to learn to get better, all this stuff, just getting ready for not only my first blade show, but my first blade show standing next to Marsha Burke. And,
no pressure.
That was exactly when I had my first panic attack. You guys did that little mini-sode about mental health the summer, something like that. And getting ready for that first blade show, man, it wasn't just that. It was the pressure of blade show. It was moving to Michigan and not having the other releases. I used to train Muay Thai and I used to play music. I had all these energetic releases and I kind of didn't have them. And I had that first panic attack and man, did that fuck me up. I don't think you're ever the same,
No.
Because it happens and you're obviously, I went to the doctors. I had him give me EKGs. I thought I had heart problems. I really, it was really messed up. But I just, I fought through it. I was like, they gave me a little prescription for this shit. And I was like, but you can't work in the knife shop if you take a fucking Xanax, you're going to cut your damn dick off.
Not with that attitude.
And so I was really struggling with this stuff and I would just work as hard as I could and get as much done during the day and just fight through this awful feeling that something's wrong. It's like anxiety. It's like you just, the best way that I could describe it was how if back in the day you got a girlfriend and you guys are going to break up and you have that just super heavy feeling in your chest where you're scared and you're sad. You just don't even know what's going to happen, but you don't want it to happen. And my anxiety was having those feelings, but without even really knowing why, and so I'd fight through that. And then I'd be able to take the medicine and chill at night. And eventually I hooked up with my buddy, Jay Rao. I don't know. Do you guys, Sean?
I know Jay.
Jay. Yeah. Jay is one of the strongest people I know. And sometimes you just got to find the right person to talk to. And it doesn't need to be the right person that you would think it is, but he just happened to be the right person. He was a fighter. And at the time, I'd been studying fight and it just it resonated with me. And talking with him was when I was able to really beat that first bout of anxiety. I actually, what I ended up doing was when I'd start feeling anxious, I would just go look at myself in the mirror and scream at myself because I realized I was a victim of my own mind and it was infuriating. Yeah. I was so mad and frustrated with myself and I couldn't help it. And I looked at myself and I would just yell. I'd be like, you're not a fucking victim of yourself. And then I'd go out in the garage and I would do my kickboxing combos until I was literally just too exhausted to feel anxious anymore. And once I realized that I could control it somewhat through then, I was able to really get back to work and build knives. And I showed up to blade show my first blade show with knives number 8 through 14, folding knives that I'd ever made. And
wow.
And I sold out on Saturday, which was incredible. One of the guys that bought my knives bought it by accident because he thought it was a Burke. Which I don't know. He came back to the table later and he's like, do you see how I could make this mistake? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, and if if you want your money back, I'll give it to you. I was praying he didn't, but I was like, I certainly don't want anyone to own my knife because of a mistake. they didn't mean to buy it. And he's like, well, no, I actually really like it. And it's he was really cool and he kept it and he was really excited about it. But it was Saturday after I had sold out. I met up with Sean again, and that was when I met you for the first time, Michael. And I'll never forget your first words to me, because Sean goes, "Hey man, this is Brian. It's his first show. You know, he just sold out." And you look at me and you go, "Fuck you." those are the very first, and you meant it in the most loving way, because I know you did. But
sure.
He's a charmer. That's how you knew.
But yeah, it was for "fuck you," and I realized, after you said it, why you said it, because your first knife show selling out is pretty fucking lucky.
It's a charmed life. Man.
It's rare.
No shit.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, like the Sunday afternoon. I love walking around a blade show Sunday afternoon, looking at knives, but it's hard for me because you see the guys that don't have, they still have all their knives on their tables. Man, they got those puppy dog eyes, and I feel awful. It's like, I want to look at your knives and check it out and talk, but I also don't want to give you the false hope that I might be buying one of your knives and then, leave you disappointed because someone walked away and you lost a sale. And, but I was fortunate enough to sell out, and man, what a cool experience. I'll never forget. I sold my first 4 knives within like 3 minutes of the doors opening. One of the guests on the show is Justin Laffer. He had noticed a picture that I put up on Facebook before the show, and he's like, "Are these first come first serve?" And I'm like, "Yeah, how the fuck else would you sell them?" I didn't really know about lotteries, and so he came and got one, and his buddy did, and then Blade Junkie Scott, he came by and he bought 2, and I was like, 2 knives. I was like, all right, man, I was shy. I was like, that's gonna be like $1,400. And he just counted out the money and handed it to me, and got a big old smile on his face and walked away. And I just couldn't believe it. That first Blade show was so crazy.
And sounds like it.
All the anxiety that I dealt with before and since, it was just completely worth it. It was just such a cool experience. And then, man, from there, it's just kind of been a quick uphill climb. I've been, generally when people ask, I'll tell them I'm the luckiest motherfucker. The community has been so supportive of me, and, working with other makers has helped me so much. Marsh, living just 10 minutes away, we became buddies, and 3-4 nights a week I was over at his shop drinking beers till 1 a.m. And you just can't hang around him without just picking some shit up, know? And
right.
And then eventually one night he's like, "Hey, how come we haven't built a fucking knife together? We do all this hanging out. We should do some working." And I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh my God. Jeremy Marsh has asked me to do a collaboration. Oh my God. And we built one of my, a model that I had called the Funk. And we went ahead and built a collaboration on that. And, I just learned so much from him. One of the things that I'll say is, Sean, you taught me how to walk. And then, Jeremy taught me how to trot and run and gallop and shit. And, I've worked with so many makers since then that it's been just the coolest thing. I'm, like I said, I think I'm one of the luckiest people, and now I'm at the point where I don't even fucking take orders anymore. Like, it got to the point I had my order book open. It hit 2 years out, which was 3 years ago, and I'm still only halfway there. What a cool story and place it's been. And now I go to Blade Show and I've got my own booth that I share with the CBJ guys. And,
right.
Yeah, we had the Super booth last year, which was super fun.
It was set up nice.
Yeah, it looked pretty fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. I really liked the new room. We requested to be there after the first year when we got the booth and they told us we were in the new room. It was a little bit of one of those like, oh man, we'll see how this is going to go, and I kind of talked to the guys I was sharing the booth with, and we're like, listen, this is going to be as good as we make it or as bad as we make it. And I was luckily, I had built up a bit of a following by then that I knew that even if I didn't have the best location, my people would come find me and buy my knives. So I wasn't really worried about selling the knives, but the shows are so much bigger than just selling knives. And
Right.
and I'm a true believer in that every show I go to, I walk away with something so much greater than just money, be it the first show I ever went to where I met, you, Sean, all the way up into, later shows where I've met people that have led to my, with the Alliance Design, my production collaboration, my working with Triple Lot Design, doing some work with them, which has been so cool. And it's just like I said, I hit that first show and it was just fucking on after that.
Yeah.
Just like I said, I think I'm the most fortunate person around. I mean, who could be luckier? I don't know. That's been fun.
So Brian, that blade show.
Yeah.
I mean, you had exhibited knives at tables before, like at your fixed blade stuff.
No,
or had you not really done
nothing.
a knife show before? That blade was really your first show.
That was it. I mean, the only thing. So I'd been to the Gathering before. I'd been to a show, but I'd never exhibited my knives, sold them, like put them on a table and said, "These are for sale. You can buy them." And that is an interesting feeling. It's a feeling of vulnerability because, online people are buying a picture. When somebody buys a knife online, they're seeing a picture and they're buying a picture. And you can make a shitty knife look decent in a picture. But
Right.
when it's on a table and someone can actually hold it and like open it and see if it works, that really, you're putting yourself out there a little bit more. And and it's fun. I love the knife shows. They're just one of my favorite things. One of my favorite parts of the job. I love them. Yeah.
Which, speaking of shows, I'll be seeing you here in a couple of weeks, won't I?
Not a couple of weeks. It's just about a week and a half here, bud. We're running out of time. I'm very excited.
I've been done for 2 weeks.
Well,
I
spent all last week ruining knives, so I have to keep working harder.
I spent all this week studying for a fucking math test. So,
Yeah, well, there you go.
No, I'm really excited for the
I got a
Kentucky.
97.
Dude,
Nice.
better than I ever did on any math test. But yeah, no, the Kentucky show is a really fun show. As you guys know, it started as more a gathering, and it still really has a lot of those vibes. And yeah, I love the shows, getting to hang out. I'm excited to spend time with you, and I mean, I know Tom's going to be there. We're going to be kicking it. The Kentucky show is a fun one, and it's nice. For whatever reason, it feels a little bit more low pressure for me. Blade Show and the Gathering, they're these big shows, and I'll spend 6 weeks working 7 days a week, just hustling as hard as I can just to show up with as much as possible, because it feels like you need to, for me, for whatever reason. And the Kentucky show, I don't feel that same pressure, and it's a little bit easier. It's easier on the mind.
Yeah.
I haven't had any panic attacks leading up to Kentucky.
Oh, good.
I just start preparing my liver.
One thing I've noticed about your knives and stuff is, you learn, like you say, you learn to walk from Sean. But what I appreciate is you didn't walk away making like Sean's knives, which I think is kind of hard to do sometimes. And you see it quite a bit when someone gets mentored by somebody and stuff.
Oh man, it's so hard. It's so hard. I have to purposefully not look at Sean's work, I have to really not look at anybody's work when I'm trying to design a knife or get inspiration. It is. And and I'll be honest, I feel as though, my earlier knives did have a lot of, Sean's very influence on them, from blade shapes, this and that. And, I even remember, Sean, when you invited me down to your place for the second time, I had the prototype for the Funk. And I was a little concerned that it was a little similar. And I was like, well, before I show anybody else, I better drive 6.5 hours, show this to fucking Sean and make sure it's okay, cause,
right.
Yeah. I think, and I think Sean, maybe you've even said it, there's only so many blade shapes that work, and we all have the same basic hand shape. And so it's, creating. Listen, if you create your own 100% unique blade shape that's never been done these days, it's probably going to be fucking weird as shit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, like at this point, most blade shapes that work have been done. And so it's inevitable that, you might make a knife and it has, it looks a little bit like this and this and this. But I think it's really just trying to act with integrity about how you go about it. And, there's, shit, I don't know. I wasn't going to tell this story, but I fucking will. I came out with a knife, called the Ice, and it was a real sleek, stabby looking motherfucker. I called it the Ice because it was super cold out when I made it that one day, and I was like, it's icy cold. I'm like, I need to name this knife something. And I had another one that was called the Fire, so they kind of balanced. And I make this knife, and I'm really proud of it. And it was kind of sleek, and it was just a departure from what I'd done so previously. And a good friend of mine, Ryan Schwartz, a few days after I designed this knife, and I put pictures up, and I had actually sold it, he sends me a picture of this knife by Peter Carey. I believe it was the VLD was of it, and he's like, "Dude, look at the material combo on this knife. How sweet is that?" And I'm like, yeah, it's sweet materials, but God damn it, I just copied this guy's knife. I mean, they're similar, They're not the same by any means. They're not the same, but they're similar. And so in my mind, I'm like, all right, it's too similar to just play off. I gotta send this guy a message. So I send him a friend request on Facebook so that I can actually send him a message. And I'd already worded the message and kind of typed it up in my mind how it was going to go. And after he accepted my friend request, I look at his pictures, and that picture that Ryan had sent me was his prototype. He had never built it before. And I look at when he had posted that, and I look at when I had posted the picture of my first Ice, and I had sold my first one 3 weeks before he ever put a picture up of this prototype he developed. And I was like, well, we all know Peter Carey didn't fucking steal my idea. I was like, this guy's never heard of me or seen one of my knives, but it was just it was a complete coincidence, and but it was just, I say this as an example to try and illustrate how there's just, you design a knife. If you look around at every other knife ever made, you'll be able to find something that someone else did that was kind of similar to it in one way. But it's all about acting with integrity and how you handle it from there. I certainly didn't send Peter a message and be like, hey man, you copied my knife, because we all know that just wasn't the case. Like, maybe he's heard my name now. No, he has actually, because I met him at the gathering this year and I bought one of his fixed blades. But yeah, it was just one of those instances of a pure coincidence of two knives that had come out in a reasonably similar time frame. That, like I said, I mean, you could go pull up pictures of the two of them and you could say, yep, of course there's close similarities. Are they the same? Not at all. Did one person copy off the other? In this instance, no fucking way. Right. Because I'd never seen his before because it hadn't existed, and I know he didn't copy my knife. That's just But yeah, and so like I said, Mike, back to your question, like. Some of my knives I did feel had, a pretty heavy shot influence, and then, but since then, as I've grown, I've kind of I've tried to develop my own style. Feel, my knife, the Hustle, that I came out with after not this year's blade show, but the year before, was really one of my first knives that I made that really, in my mind, kind of had my look to it. Like, I didn't look at it and say like, oh yeah, it was great. It kind of had this guy's influence mixed with this guy's influence and blah, blah, blah. It was the first knife that I ever really, really, really made that I was like, this is my look. And and that Hustle is one of my favorites.
And that's what I'm getting at. It seems like you must have done been very cognizant of not doing a Sean or a Marsh or whatever. And it seems like you've really done well with creating a style that's your own. And like you said, there's only so many blade shapes, so many handles. Yeah. But it's all cumulative, and it becomes, you started adding your own elements then those blade shapes can become yours, your style, you start to own it in a way. And I think that you've gotten away with, creating your own style, which is tough in today's market for someone fairly new to the folder game.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, no, I'm, like I said, I mean, at this point, we're coming up, in about 2 months, my 4-year anniversary of making folders. And
brand new. It's like yesterday, man.
Yeah, and I think maybe I jibber jabbered and ranted so much that I didn't really give a decent timeline. I spent the first 7 years of my knife making doing just fixed blades.
It's crazy. It's like there's many reasons we wanted you on here, but one is also you're kind of newer to a lot of the community that we are familiar with, but I had no idea that you've been making for as long as you had.
Yeah.
Once again, it's like you've been doing it more than I thought you had been.
Yeah. And I mean, like it's, I did it for, we're coming up on 12 years this summer, but first couple years were just having no idea what, like to say I was a knife maker. Yeah, I was learning to be a knife maker. I didn't, one of the things that a lot of the newer guys in the community really benefit from, the newer makers, is starting out as collectors before they were makers, Mm-hmm. So you take somebody that was a collector before they were a maker. There's a couple guys that I don't want to say taken under my wing because they've grown on their own right without me, but dudes that I've helped, Ryan Schwartz and Jensen, and they were collectors before they started making. So they had a good idea and an eye for kind of what they liked, and they were able to kind of start off and, have developed tastes where I just didn't. The shit that I was making at first was just kind of like, just like random ass shit. I don't even know. I'd be like, hey, let's try making something that looks like a Bowie knife. And let's make a little, right. I definitely did a lot of drop point, the drop point hunter stuff was, kind of my, what I did a lot of, but yeah, and back then, and maybe it's better for people. I don't want to say better because what's better for one person is different for another, but to start off without any preconceived notions and just to kind of flounder for a while and make a bunch of weird shit. And then, eventually it kind of led to where I am now, but I'm grateful for my time doing fixed blades before folders because, fixed blades, there's less to focus on. Oh, you don't have to worry how you're going to break it in half and make it lock up. Fixed blades there's two things. Is it comfortable and does it cut? Mm-hmm. And, you can do that. And I feel that, I learned a good sense of ergonomics making fixed blades, because a folder, of course you want it to be comfortable in your hand, but you don't hold a folder like you hold a fixed blade. And maybe you do. I don't want to speak for everybody.
Let's
but
be honest. It doesn't get the use that a fixed blade gets out there anymore. Some people maybe, but and it's like you make those.
Well, I use my folder that I carry in my pocket more than a fixed blade because it's always right there.
Yeah.
But if I have some heavy work to do, I'm gonna go grab one of the fixed blades out of my little fixed blade collection. I have a small little collection of fixed blades that I really like.
Well, it's like when you're making those fixed blades, it's almost like those first beginning ones, you're making a tool. And it's not for a little bit till you realize that can be a palette for creating a design or a style. It's just a pure utilitarian type of knife.
Yeah, it was. No, and I just, and what I would do is I'd just take them out and I'd go into the woods and I'd just build a little fire and I'd cut shit. Mm-hmm. I was living in Colorado, so I had the Rocky Mountains at my disposal. And so, I'd finish a fixed blade and I'd drive up to the mountains and hike in a mile and, build a fire, cook some cheesy sausage and
nice.
Just cut shit. And it was great. That was fun. Those were good days when we didn't have nearly as many obligations and you could just run off to the mountains whenever you wanted.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
Yeah. And sorry.
So like you said, you went 0 to 60 in a hurry with the folder thing, right? It really has not been very long.
It picked up super quick. No. I yeah, it's been, like I said, not quite 4 years, and man, it's my world is a completely different place. And again, it's come down to that fateful week at Sean's shop where I learned how to make a folder, and I learned how to make a good folder. I think I make a decent knife, and the way that I learned from you, Sean, is how I do it. I do it one at a time. When I build a knife for a customer, I'm working on only their knife. I know it's so much more time efficient to build like 2 or 3 at a time, because you got your drill set up to drill holes. You fucking drill some damn holes. But I can only do one at a time. I get bored quickly. Like, sometimes I'll work with Nick Swan is a maker up here in Colorado, one of my best friends, and we've done a bunch of work together. And I've done a small line of knives. I call it the T. Like, it was based off my ice, but I call it the Ice T, where the T stands for technology. And I cut out the parts on his CNC, and or I cut it out. I don't even know how to turn the fucking thing on. Speaking of turning things on, but I'll get parts for 3 knives, and I'll have to like set 3 locks at once, and it's almost like torture. I just like, it's really just awful. I don't know how guys that really do it efficiently and build a lot, they'll set up 5 or 6 or 10 knives at once and just kind of go step by step. And I know it's so much more efficient, but it really makes it feel more like work for me. And I don't like when my knife making feels like work.
Right. That's not why you got into it, right? You got into it because you loved it.
Yeah, no, I love making knives. I love playing with knives, collecting knives. For this show, I went and I got 4 or 5 of my favorite knives. I just got them on the desk in front of me.
Awesome.
And it's just and there's like, I don't know, I just really love knives, and they're man's oldest tool. Knives and scrapers, the old one hand tools from 50,000, 100,000 years ago. And I just think that being a knife maker is such a cool thing. We get to carry on the tradition of man's oldest craft.
Yeah.
And I love it. I think it's cool, and it's a unique thing, and I like building my knives slowly, one at a time.
So one of the things that you've done, Brian, is this sort of production collaboration project thing. You mentioned earlier the Alliance Designs thing, and
yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm not sure people are completely clear about what that's about, but that's basically a company that you work through who arranges a production company to build a design, right?
Basically, yeah. So Alliance Designs is Eden and Bill, and they are knife collectors. They are, they've been members of the community for a really long time. And basically, they reached out to me. We talked up a design. We decided on my Ice Light.
Right.
It was one of my most popular designs at the time, and it's a pain in the ass knife to build. And so I was like, I'll happily let you guys build that. I don't know why some knives are just a little more difficult to build than others, and there's no like real quantifiable reason why it should be that way, but they just are. Some knives are just more difficult, and the Ice Light was one of those. They reached out to me, and I built them a prototype, and they worked with Riot Riot did all the manufacturing for this knife, and it just came out. It came out beautifully. It was such a fun project. It was so cool to see your design made by a high quality production facility.
Right.
And it's been nothing but positive for me. There was definitely some worry when I did it about how having a production version of one of my models would affect the current sales and the secondary value of it and whatnot. I think that's something that all makers really consider heavily when they're deciding whether or not to do that, because it's very important. And it did not affect me negatively in any way. The customs that I do are still very custom compared to, the production one we did was not bare bones, but it was just titanium and steel.
Right.
And the majority, the customs that I do when I build a book spot for a customer, there's generally a hand rubbed finish on it, or there's, Timascus or, dark tie accents. And it really, it didn't negatively affect me in any way. And quite to the contrary, it brought a lot of new customers, to be familiar with me. And it's been great. And to be honest, I'm very much looking forward to the next one that we're going to do, that I'm starting to, once I get back from Kentucky, I'm going to work on a prototype for them again.
Nice.
Yeah. It was, it was like, I just listened to the Bob T's episode, which was, oh man, trying to come on your show after listening to him on your show is like having Metallica open up for you.
Right.
You got to come on a rock harder than, or like
Right.
Whoever your fucking band is. But he said the reason you should do collaborations is for fucking money. And I got paid.
Right.
Shit. I got fucking paid.
Right.
And it brought new people to me. And as well, it made my design accessible to people that can't afford $1,000 custom knife. Our knives are expensive, and we get surrounded in our circles by all these nice high-end custom knives, where all of a sudden maybe it doesn't see, like when everyone else has $1,000, $2,000 knives, it doesn't seem like $1,000's that crazy, but I mean, that's a lot of fucking money.
Hell yeah.
And even my production one was, the MSRP was $350, and that's still a good amount of money, but the people that can afford that is a much greater demographic than the people that can afford the high-end custom, I feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you heard on that show, that was kind of an interesting thing that Birch was asking him about was the idea of opening it up to a larger customer base. And I mean, you guys are on different points in your career arc. I would say maybe by significant margin, right?
I would agree. Yeah.
But I mean, certainly in your case, Brian, it seems all positive. And so,
absolutely was.
But I think Bob's perspective is always valuable and greatly appreciated. And Bob's also on an ultra different point in his career arc than maybe both of you guys, right? From a,
sure.
Like he's a straight legendary guy. So for him, okay, I'm not building my customer base. Everybody knows who Bob is, right? But it's
and after listening to his first episode with you guys, we talked about that. I went on Mass Drop and bought one of his productions that he did there.
There you go.
With them, just to, I was like, I know like he didn't build it personally, but it's his design, and I want to at least feel something, and like experience the feeling of what one of his, at least the shape, because I mean the finish and the fit, I mean, it's all really nice, but I'm sure it's not to his custom level. I've actually never had the honor of handling one of his knives. But like I said, I was like, well, here's a chance for me to go. First of all, support Bob, because everyone that gets sold through there, it helps support him. But more than that was just to kind of experience a little bit of that, of the Bob T, of the, the dude, the first person to put a fucking pocket clip on a custom knife. Holy shit. That episode, it was, I really enjoy listening to your guys' show. You're the only podcast I listen to. I hate podcasts. I really like you. I do. I'm not, maybe I shouldn't have said that. You can edit that.
Yeah.
out.
Say,
I really don't.
We won't tell Matt.
Yeah. I'm not a podcast guy. I can't do audio books. I have a hard time paying attention. I listen, I want music, in my headphones, generally live music. A lot of times in the shop, I'll be watching live performances on YouTube on my phone, and I'll like have it set up under my grinder. So like in between passes, I can peek down and take a little look at, what this dude looks like when they're rocking out.
That's funny. I had a really funny comment. Birch and I were at the Jersey show. Tom was there as well. And I talked to Jade Marsh, and I was talking to him about the podcast, and he's a listener. And Jade made a really funny comment about, he's like, "Hey dude, you guys talk too fucking slow." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He goes, "I have to listen to you on like 1.5 or 2 times You shit goes too slow. You guys should talk faster, man. I'm like, oh yeah, all right, talk faster. I got it. I'm making notes.
Yeah, no, actually, so I like I said, when I was at Michigan State, I studied telecommunications with a specialty in audio production, and so one of the things I learned is a lot of like commercials on the radios, they'll actually they'll edit it and they'll remove the spaces between the people's words.
Yeah.
Because our brains can comprehend stuff so much faster than someone speaking it, and so talk. I say talk faster, but I'm gonna have a shorter episode. So that doesn't. I don't know who that works out.
Yeah, we go Jade speed. We're gonna be done in 35 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. So we got some fun questions, Brian. We always
okay. Yeah.
We always have some. We call them fun questions, silly questions, whatever. That kind of go in some cases from some earlier topics that we've talked about on the show. So, Birch, you want to take a swing at one of the fun questions for Brian?
Sure. Hey, Brian.
All right.
What you wearing?
I got my favorite sweatpants on, bro. I don't know what you guys are wearing, but I got sweatpants. I got like a Tom Crine t-shirt. Yeah, no, I'm not on TV. I don't look pretty right now.
No, I was going to ask what's something in the shop that you don't like doing? What's a process that you're like, fuck this?
Hand rubbing. I hand rub a lot of my blades. I love how they look. When I make a knife for myself personally, I prefer a hand rub finish.
Oh yeah,
man, does that suck to do. And lately, I've noticed as I got a little older, my elbows will get a little bit sore. Like, what the fuck's up with that? I got to find some youth pills or something.
Old dude problems, bro.
Older, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find a way to. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe get some elbow braces so I can rub faster. But hold on.
That's what she said.
Yeah, there we go. There had to be at least one per episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't really love hand rubbing. I'd say my favorite part is grinding my bevels. I enjoy being in front of the grinder, grinding a blade. I think, I did fixed blades for so long where that's really the majority of the work that I like grinding my blades. I grind flat. I do flat grind blades. I've tried hollow grinding and I'm just not good at it at all. So I like flat grinding and I dislike hand rubbing.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, you know what else I really dislike is I've been dropping a lot of fucking screws on the floor lately, and you just spend so much time on your hands and knees. I dropped a pivot collar the other day, and that takes a little bit of time, to get it shaped and this and that. And I never found it. I even got my stepson Milo out there with a flashlight trying to help me. I figured he's closer to the ground, maybe he could see something, but I have no idea where that thing disappeared to.
No clue. And I always make a point that when I get to the finishing stages of stuff where, this piece that's specifically made for this knife and finished and blah, blah, I vacuum and sweep before getting to that stage to make sure I have a clean floor. And they still just fucking go away somewhere.
Yeah.
Like socks in the
vacuuming
dryer.
And sweeping, cleaning. That's something I don't do enough of either. There's some guys that have really clean shops, and I love a clean shop. I just can't maintain that. I'm not. There's little piles of clutter just everywhere. It seems every now and then it'll seem like it's you have to like search for a flat surface to lay something down on.
Oh yeah,
yeah. No, I've been to your shop, Sean. We don't hang out there. But yeah, no, I love a clean shop, but it's just not me.
Yeah.
So losing, especially, even, the screws we use, those titanium, it's a $165 per one little 256 screw. I'm going to look for a minute for that.
Right.
And,
right.
And I really don't like doing that.
Yeah. So. Tiny and expensive.
It is. And, it's stuff like that I think can make a knife take so much longer to build. Like, on paper, a knife should say take 3-4 days, whatever, however long it takes you for that certain build. But it always seems to take like an extra day. And you're like, what happens? Like, I spent 2 hours on the ground looking for a fucking dollar screw.
Yeah.
All right. I somehow managed to screw up the threading on a thumb stud. I didn't even know that was possible, but I've done it. So it's just kind of the little annoying parts that I don't like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, man, do you have a pet steel?
Favorite steel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. CPM 3V is, you know, I know you're a fan as well.
He nodded knowingly.
Yeah, no, I like that stuff. I don't like the triple temper cycles. It takes forever, but you know, it's so tough, and it takes different finishes. Well, I'm actually going to try hand drumming it for the first time next week.
Oh boy,
I got something planned out. Yeah, I know. It's here. I am talking about how much I dislike it.
Get your anti-inflammatories ready there, bud.
Yeah, buckle up, baby.
Dude,
Yeah,
you're not gonna like it.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a very good. Listen, the very first time I ever encountered hand rubbing with 3V was with Jeremy Marsh when we did my funk collab, and he started, you know, working on it, and I ended up. That was how I learned. I do this finish called a dark rub, I call it, and that kind of came out of that process. Was like we've been rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing. You're like, all right, we got to do something different, and and that was when I learned that finish from him on that knife.
You should just call it the fuck that finish.
You know, I've named shit worse before. Dude, my fucking puppy's name is Biggie Smalls.
Nice.
You know, that's not the best name for a dog, but it's the name that I chose.
Right.
And somehow my wife agreed.
It's not the worst. That's a fact. So Brian, one of the fun questions we always ask is about we did this Knives of the Movies. That was a super popular episode. Yeah. Everybody loved it. Yeah. What's your favorite movie knife?
Okay, so I kind of mentioned earlier a little bit that I didn't really have like the Rambo knife never jumped out at me. I didn't have that knife. The first knife that I really remember seeing was much later in life, and I used to love the Bear Grylls Man vs. Wild show. I think that was him.
Yeah.
And before he got his deal with Gerber, he carried a custom bushcraft knife made by Bailey. Maybe it's Rob Bailey. I forget the first name, but it's a custom handmade knife, bushcraft style, out of a guy in the UK, and I was just, and I'd already known, custom knives at that point a little bit. And I was like, holy shit, and I saw the knife on TV, and then, I did a little bit of research, and I was like, this guy carries an actual custom knife. How rad is that?
Right.
And I loved it, and I lusted after it because I was making fixed blades at the time. And, the bushcraft world is a very big influence on fixed blades. And, a couple years ago, maybe it wasn't even that long ago, I ended up coming into one of that exact knife from my buddy who I mentioned before, Stuart Ashner, and through kind of like a trade gift scenario type deal, he shipped me that knife, and how cool is that? That not only like I had seen this knife and I had fallen in love with it, but now I actually own that knife,
right?
Custom,
right.
Not obviously not the one that was in Bear Grylls' hands. But the exact same model, handmade by the same person. I have one, and it's just one of my favorites. And one of the things that's cool is when this guy would make the knife, because he made it specifically for Stu. I don't know if it's laser or whatever, kind of puts the customer's name or initials into the tang.
Oh, wow.
And Stu was like, oh, you're going to have to grind that off. And I was like, not a fucking chance, buddy. That's why I got my knife, on the tang, it says S. Ashner on it.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I love it. So that's my movie knife that it wasn't a movie, it was a TV show, but it was cool. I think, because it's a quality knife, and I got to actually like see it put into use. And, people talk about, Bear Grylls, oh, he had camera crew following him and he slept in a hotel, this or that. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't give a fuck. Dude's a badass. And that was the cool knife that he carried. And I now have one, and it lives in my nightstand along with my half of my collection of fixed blades that are spread out all around the house.
There you go.
I don't have like an organized area for collecting my fixed. I like to collect fixed blades. For folders, I like to carry one of my folders that I made. I think I get pleasure out of that. And I think it's a really good, business marketing thing when you meet somebody, be it friendly or professionally, and, you want to explain what you do or show an example of what you do, being able to have a up-to-date quality example of a knife that you make, I feel is a valuable thing. And so I carry one of my folders, and then I like to collect and carry fixed blades from my friends. And
way cool.
I like.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my movie knife run over into some spiel about something I don't remember.
So, Brian, I think that's all the questions we had. Did you have any questions for us or anything else that you wanted to throw in here before we wrap this thing up?
I really don't. I'm really looking forward to this Kentucky show coming up, and then coming up at the beginning of next year, I'm having a fucking baby. Well, my wife's having a baby. I'm not having it, but
that would be pretty special.
That was what was that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie? Was it whatever? But
Junior.
But yeah, so I'm Junior. Yeah,
Junior.
I think so.
Right.
But yeah, so that's a pretty big thing on the horizon. I'm about to have my first kid, and it's a little girl, and I could not be any more excited to not only get to be a dad, but to get to be a dad for a little girl. And I'm very, very curious how that's going to affect my my knife making and my thoughts on business and stuff like that. I think my direct plan is as soon as I'm back from Kentucky, I'm going to start prepping for blade shows so I can, I don't know. I imagine having like a small young child could affect that, working 7 hours a day for 7 days a week for 6 weeks straight. So
I'm going to go with highly likely.
Yeah. So I'm going to be. Yeah. So my plan is to try and start prepping and getting ahead of the game and just get ready to give all the love I got. And I'm just, I think it's an honor to be able to be a dad, I think. And I'm just so excited for it. So, so I got that coming up, and I actually haven't made any official announcement about that and told the people. Maybe I should say something to my group before this episode airs, or maybe not. We'll just let everyone kind of discover this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got that coming up. This Kentucky show is my last knife show pre-fatherhood.
Right.
So it's definitely given me some motivation to get my ass in the shop and work. It was fucking cold today, so I got to try and remember. It's these cold days, it's easy to go inside and put on some sweatpants and play Mario Kart with my stepson. So yeah, I got to keep pushing ahead. But I don't think I have anything else really to add too much other than, every day I wake up and feel fortunate that I get to make knives for people and that people want to buy them,
right.
It's, I think one of my biggest pet peeves that I see out there sometimes is makers not appreciating the customers.
Yeah.
And, when you start to get a little bit of success, and especially really quickly, like I did, I think it's easy to forget that, without those dudes buying your knife, you ain't got shit.
Right.
And when I was growing up in Metro Detroit, my family owned a small chain of drugstores, and my grandfather's pharmacist, my dad's pharmacist, my uncles. And so everybody, my whole family, they all kind of worked within, they were all pharmacists together, and within the community, we kind of got to be not known a little bit, but it was funny. I'd go to like the orthodontist or something, and they'd see the last name Efros. I'm like, Efros, who's your father? Which one do you belong to?
Right.
And it was just kind of neat because people around me knew who my family was and respected them for being good people.
Yeah.
And that was something that was extremely impactful on me from a young age. And even when I moved out to Colorado, there were still occasionally people that I'd run into that had heard my family, and they'd always like, if they were a little bit older, they'd launch into the story of how the candy aisle in my grandfather's store was like the best they'd ever seen. Just something simple. And it really, I have one of the aisle markers from the drugstore hanging up in my shop.
Oh,
and
awesome.
It's a really important thing for me. And, that's my grandfather, my dad, my uncles, they treated people well, and people loved them for that. And when I'd work at the drugstore, ringing the register, my grandpa would tell me each day try and learn one customer's name and just remember their name.
Yeah.
So that way when they come in and, they say, oh, hey, Mr. Whoever the fuck you are. But just when someone remembers your name, it makes you feel special.
Yeah, absolutely.
And trying to remember that and pass that on to my customers is something that's really important for me. And it's a big pet peeve of mine when it seems like other people and makers don't grasp that, Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Just treating people good. If you're a customer of mine, you're special to me. You've helped put food in my family's mouth, and I want to make the process of building you a knife, an equally pleasurable, an exciting experience. I want,
Yeah. I mean, I kind of joked around earlier about Efros effervescence but it's for real. I mean, the four of us have known each other for a little while now. And I have to say, Brian, I think that's something that I see or that comes through to me when we talk is that there's a sincere appreciation on your part. That your sincerity behind it all comes through very clear. And so I think you're doing a great job with that piece of it. I agree completely. There's a bunch of people, maybe a bunch is an overstatement. There are some people out there who consider themselves kind of above the crowd. And I think you're very thankful to have people appreciate your work. And that comes through loud and clear in conversations that certainly that I've had with you and I see you have with other people. So it's well done on that piece. Keep that up.
Well, like I say, thank my dad who taught me how to treat people.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all learn different lessons from different people in our life. My mom taught me how to be resilient, how to fight for what you want, how to maybe not accept if you're in a circumstance, in a situation you don't love, you don't have to accept that. You can be strong and change that.
Right.
And then, my dad is the one who taught me that people deserve respect simply for being other human beings on this planet. You don't have to earn my respect. You can certainly fucking lose it real quick.
Right.
But you don't have to do something to earn that shit. By simply just being another human being, you are worthy of respect.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, treat people right, treat yourself even better.
There you go. All right. Well, dude, thanks for coming on with us. Congrats again on the new inbound baby. Congrats to you and your family. That's fantastic stuff. And
thanks,
no kidding, man.
Yeah, like you said, it's
this is going to be a trip. I think I'm, maybe not knowledgeable enough to know how scared I should be. Seems like a lot of people that have kids, which is most people, know something that I don't. But I'm excited to learn that.
I went into the whole childbirth thing not appreciating enough how, I don't know, emotionally crazy an experience that is. And I think you're someone that's going to be totally blown away and soak that whole thing in, because it is a trip, and it's a super, super special time. So I'm excited for you.
I'm a crier. I'm going to be doing lots of crying.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Get ready. I'm going to see. Oh yeah. Be doing live videos, fucking all kinds of wet on my face.
Yeah. No, it's a super awesome thing, man. I'm super excited for you.
Well, you guys, thank you again so much. Getting the message, asking to be coming on the show with you has really, truly been an honor. Like I said, as makers, as people, I've looked up to you guys for quite a while, and to be able to sit and talk and have you guys, be interested in my story is truly an honor, and I appreciate that, y'all.
Thanks, man.
We appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Except Tom crying. I'm taking that as a personal insult, dipping out on purpose. I'm coming for you next week, buddy. Coming for you with a pencil. Maybe we could draw something.
And I'm going to be wearing my crying beanie.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I should bring that. I wonder.
You should.
Maybe it'll bring back some memories for him.
Absolutely.
I got it right over here. I still put that on when I got a hard knife to grind, try and channel my inner Tom crying.
There you go. It works.
Yeah.
Hardest working man in show business. I say it every time.
Mm-hmm. It's a fact.
All right. Well, hey, thanks again for joining us, Brian. We just a quick shout out to everybody who follows the show. We appreciate everybody who joins us in the Facebook group, gives us feedback. talks to us about what they like and didn't like. And, there's lots of things that people identify with when they listen to the show. So this would be a good one for them. People seem to really enjoy the interview stuff. And so we appreciate everybody taking the time to chat with us on Facebook in our group and following our Instagram account. We have a very loyal following on Patreon, and they help support the show through donations and stuff. So high five to the Patreon crew for all of their help. We kick them some insider information every once in a while and talk about some things that are coming up. So they kind of had a heads up that you were going to join us. And
cool.
yeah, so thanks to them for all their support of the show.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's it. So as always, we appreciate everybody's time. Brian, thanks for coming out with us, and thanks for listening.
Hey, again, thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
Thanks, all.
Thank you, guys.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.